Chapter 684. The impeachment of the Emperor bloodline was finally over, and Gohan won. After learning the source of the 1,000,000 votes, Shi Jueyuan left the arena with a flick of his sleeve because he had to accept this result. Fortunately, he had left the arena with a flick of his sleeve. If he had seen what happened next, he might have been so angry that he would have vomited blood. It was a pity that the impeachment of the Emperor bloodline could only be used once every 10 years. Otherwise, Shi Jueyuan would not have minded using it again. Next, Gohan finally passed a relatively peaceful and harmonious period. He knew that the 8 Cities Conference was coming. At this time on Earth, some of the highways had become ruins, but there were still a few highways that maintained their relatively intact state. This was because these highways were still in use. Every 2 or 3 years, there would be maintenance on these highways to ensure that they were in basic use. In the Yan Huang country, there was only one such highway, and that was the Yanyu Highway. As the name suggested, the Yanyu Highway was the highway that connected Yanjing City and Yuzhong City. The Yanyu Highway was a new highway formed by combining parts of several highways from before the apocalypse. The surface of this highway was reinforced with dimensional crystal or powder, so that ordinary Yuan Ko could not cause damage to this highway. This highway was the only highway connecting Yuzhong City and Yanjing City. Without any accidents, it would take about 3 days to reach Yanjing City through this highway. In fact, in general, this time would be extended to about 5 days, because this highway was a highway that needed to be repaired as one traveled. Especially now, when Yuzhong City was surrounded, the Yanyu Highway had been severely damaged. Nearly 45 kilometers of the road had been completely destroyed. After 20 days of emergency repair, this highway had finally been restored to basic smoothness, and the pre-installed material communication between Yanjing City and Yanjing City was once again smooth. At this moment, on the Yanyu Highway, there was a maglev train about 100 meters long traveling at a constant speed. It looked like a train, but this train was traveling on the highway. What was even more peculiar was that this train was not made up of sections, but a single piece like a car. Moreover, this train was very wide, about 8 meters wide. The outside of the vehicle was wrapped in a thick layer of very tight armor, and it did not even look like a window. It was like an armored car. This was the greatest human transportation invention after the apocalypse, the armored maglev train. Everyone might not think that this was so great. Was it just installing an armored train with a maglev device? Armored trains had already been phased out before the apocalypse, okay? Armored trains had indeed been eliminated before the apocalypse, but the problem was that there was no such thing as Yuan Ko before the apocalypse. After the Great Calamity, only something as coarse and sturdy as the armored train could withstand the Yuan Shun's frenzied attack. According to practical tests, the latest model of armored maglev trains could ignore the direct attacks of Dragon-class primary Daos and below. His armor could withstand the attacks of Nether-class primary Daos for an hour, Meteor-class primary Daos for 30 minutes, and Universe-class primary Daos for 3 minutes. Therefore, the armored maglev train was still a relatively safe mobile fortress, and it of the transportation of ordinary sword-bearers and ordinary people. Generally speaking, the sword-bearers used their own maglev flying cars to travel. The maglev flying cars were fast and small, and they could travel through all kinds of complicated terrain. At the same time, they could rely on their own speed to get rid of most of the Yuan Ko's pursuit. Most importantly, they could be stored in their dimensional pocket, and they were the first choice of transportation for the sword-bearers on small-scale trips. However, the maglev flying cars consumed too much energy, and the cost of long-distance travel was too high. It might be the best choice for small-scale trips, but when it came to large-scale trips, or when there was a need to transport a lot of heavy objects, the maglev flying cars would be useless. At that time, the armored maglev train would be the only choice. This was the same principle before the apocalypse. The lowest cost of long-distance transportation of large quantities of goods was by sea. In places where there was no sea, the most economical way to transport goods was by train. No one would drive their own car to transport goods for someone else. Yanjing and Yuzhong City were the two headquarter cities that had the closest relationship. Every day there would be a heavy transportation task between the two cities. Every 3 days, a train would depart from the two cities, filled with millions of tons of all kinds of resources. These were all resources that could not be produced in their own cities, so they had to be obtained from the other city. It sounded a little scary. Before the apocalypse, the standard load of a 60-section, 1,500-meter-long freight train was 3,600 tons. Even if it was overloaded, it wouldn't exceed 4,000 tons. How could this armored maglev train, which was only 100 meters long, carry millions of tons of goods? Even if you could bear the weight, how could you pile up so many materials? But in reality, an armored maglev train could indeed carry millions of tons. This was because the materials were not placed directly on the train, but in dimensional iron boxes. A standard 1 cubic meter dimensional iron box had 1,500 cubic meters of space. This was equivalent to expanding the space inside the armored maglev train by a whole 1,500 times. An armored maglev train was equivalent to the load of 1,500 ordinary freight trains. How could it not carry millions of tons of materials? Moreover, the production cost of a dimensional iron box was much lower than that of a dimensional pocket. The resources needed to produce a dimensional pocket could be used to produce 10-dimensional iron boxes, and the space in a dimensional pocket was only 1/10 that of a dimensional iron box. Unfortunately, human technology was still unable to make a breakthrough. The size of a dimensional iron box was limited to 1 cubic meter, and it could not change its shape as it pleased like a dimensional pocket. This limited the use of dimensional iron boxes to transportation. It was impossible for a sword wielder to carry such a hindrance. Originally, the transportation route between Yuzhong City and Yanjing City would have a train every 3 days. But ever since Yeyang Fortress had been breached, there had been no activity on the transportation route for a whole 60 days. Some of the materials between the two cities had become extremely scarce. After a period of repair, the armored maglev train between the two cities was filled with all kinds of urgently needed materials, and it was finally set to move again. Normally, other than freight, the armored maglev train also carried passengers. Some sword wielder who only wanted to go to Yanjing City, some weaker sword wielder, and some ordinary people would choose to take the armored maglev train to Yanjing City or Yuzhong City. They would take up about 20 meters of space in the armored maglev train. This 20 meters of space was standard for armored maglev trains. But this time there was something special. The passenger compartment of the armored maglev train took up 50 meters of space. This meant that a lot of precious and urgently needed materials were taken up, but there was nothing that could be done about it. This was because this was the reopening of the armored maglev train after 40 days. No one knew what had happened on the highway during these 60 days. Perhaps many of the highways had already been destroyed by Yuan Ko. If that happened, the armored maglev train would need to stop and repair the roads. When the armored maglev train stopped was the most dangerous moment. At that time, the defense of the armored maglev train was at its lowest, and it couldn't shake off the slower Yuan Ko. Therefore, a large number of sword wielder were needed to protect the armored maglev train. Therefore, the extra 30 meters of space was used to transport the sword wielder protecting the armored maglev train. But other than the sword wielder protecting the armored maglev train, there were also some additional passengers on the train. They were the representatives from Yuzhong City to participate in the 8 Academies conference. A long time ago, it was mentioned that the academies of the 8 base cities would hold a competition every year. In the beginning, it was just to see how strong the younger generation of the 8 base cities were, so that the higher-ups of the human race could have a sense of what was going on. It was an absolutely friendly thing. But later on, this thing gradually changed. It became a competition between the 8 base cities. They were competing on the potential of their cities, competing on the future of their cities. It could even decide the authority of the 8 base cities' sword committee. As a result, it became a competition that the 8 base cities attached great importance to. Every year, each base city would send their most outstanding students to participate in the competition to strive for victory and glory for their base cities. The August conference should have started a month ago, but because of Yuzhong City, the conference was delayed by a month. This was already a mercy from the Sword Committee. Therefore, when the armored maglev train was put into use again, this group of representatives immediately set off for Yanjing City to participate in the 8 Academies Conference. This group of representatives was led by Yuzhong University's dean, the Tiger Spirit. There were 3 students participating in the competition: Guhan, Ku Rokin, and a female sword wielder called Jin Yujia. It was said that Jin Yujia was originally the 5th candidate, but because the 3rd and 4th candidates had all died in the invasion, Jin Yujia had jumped up. Apart from Guhan, Ku Rokin and Jin Yujia were both sword wielder at the treasure sword level. Originally, Guhan didn't want to participate in the competition. He just wanted to go to Yanjing City. That was because it was somewhat shameless for Guhan to participate in the 8 Academies Conference as a sword wielder at the famous sword level. This was because most of the participants in the 8 Academies Conference were sword wielder at the treasure sword level. If Guhan participated in such a competition, he would be suspected of bullying the weak. However, the Tiger Spirit insisted. Because Yuzhong City had been in the lower reaches for many years, its best result in the past 10 years was only 3rd place. This made the Tiger Spirit very embarrassed. Many people laughed behind his back that he didn't know how to teach disciples, even though he didn't know how to teach disciples in the first place. For the sake of his own reputation, the Tiger Spirit almost knelt in front of Guhan and begged him to participate in the competition. In the Tiger Spirit's words, the 8 Academies Conference was to test the strength of the younger generation of the 8 base cities. It was to see which base city had the most potential. Therefore, there was only one requirement for the participants, and that was that the participants had to be a sword wielder for less than a year. Other than that, there were no other restrictions. Even if they were Emperor sword wielder, there would be no problem. Throughout history, many geniuses had participated in this competition as sword wielder at the famous sword level. Guhan wasn't the first, so there was no need to worry at all. Guhan had already promised the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit to participate in the competition. After the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit persisted, Guhan no longer refused and agreed. Chapter 685. Brother Guhan, how should I use this sword? Should I use this much strength? On the train, Jin Yujia was in a posture of drawing her sword in front of Guhan. Not to mention, this posture looked decent and could be considered a very standard posture. However, in Guhan's eyes, this posture was full of flaws. At the very least, the other party's lower body was not stable. Her legs were actually walking in a lotus position. It looked quite beautiful, but in fact, it was shaky. Guhan did not need to use much strength. As long as he gently kicked her leg with a sharp weapon, the little girl would fall to the ground in an instant. However, she was here to ask Guhan for advice on swordsmanship, so it was not appropriate for Guhan to do such a thing. He just nodded, pointed out 1 or 2 more obvious problems, and said no more. Guhan did not want to talk to her, but Jin Yujia did not. After she realized that Guhan actually did not want to talk to her, she did not leave because of embarrassment. Instead, she moved closer to Guhan, hugged Guhan's hand, and put it between her big breasts. She said in a coquettish tone, "Brother Guhan, don't be so cold. Teach me some swordsmanship. I watched your battle with the ancestral dragon. It was so cool. My dreams are all about your cool swordsmanship. You know my identity in the game?" Since she could tell about the battle between Guhan and the ancestral dragon, It was obvious that Jin Yujia knew Gohan's identity as the military governor in the game. There were not many people in Yuzhong City who knew about Gohan's identity. In the beginning, there were only about 1,000 sword-bearers. Even if these sword-bearers later revealed Gohan's identity, the secret was still relatively well controlled because Liu Lei had issued a clear order to not spread it, and Tomono Kakashi was supervising it. At the very least, no news of it spread on the internet. In reality, there were no more than 2,000 people who knew about it. Hee, Big Brother Gohan, have you forgotten? I'm also a sword-bearer on the city wall. The moment I fight shoulder to shoulder with Big Brother Gohan is my happiest moment. If Jin Yujia was like this, any man would feel comfortable and have a good impression of Jin Yujia. Moreover, to be honest, Jin Yujia's appearance wasn't bad. She had some resemblance to Jin Xiaoqiao from before the Great Calamity. However, this girl's utilitarian nature was too strong. Although she displayed an innocent and worshipped Gohan, Gohan could see a different expression between her eyebrows. Obviously, this girl did not approach him simply. She had an extremely strong purpose. For such a girl, Gohan was too lazy to pay attention to her. I'm tired. Gohan coldly spat out these 3 words. Jin Yujia's smiling face revealed traces of awkwardness, as well as some shame and annoyance. However, she quickly concealed the emotions on her face and revealed a tearful look. Big Brother Gohan, did little sister say something wrong? Is Big Brother Gohan angry? I'm not angry. I'm tired. Gohan's reply was still dry. At this time, another girl sitting beside Gohan said somewhat impatiently, Master is already tired. Big Sister Jean, please leave immediately. Master needs to rest. Jin Yujia was attacked from both sides. She finally couldn't keep her face any longer. She stood up from the bed and quickly walked to the door. When she was about to leave, she suddenly turned around and said to the girl who had just spoken, Miss Lucihua, don't think that you're so great. Without Big Brother Gohan, you're nothing. Do you really think that you became the Pavilion Lord based on your own ability? What a big joke. After saying this, Jin Yujia flicked her sleeves and left. The door of the room was slammed shut with a loud bang. Lucihua, who had been scolded by Jin Yujia, remained silent for a long time before she murmured, Why did you give this hot seat to me? This position is really not something I can bear. Master, you should give it to someone else. The Sword Pavilion of the Sword Pavilion no longer belongs to me. If you really don't want to take this position, then quickly accept a disciple and give this position to your disciple like I did. Gohan said indifferently. Then he pulled out Qingpin from his chest and wiped the saliva from Qingpin's mouth. He then put her under the warm quilt. Gu Yun had already burrowed into the quilt beside Qingpin. However, she wasn't sleeping. Instead, she was carefully reading a book. The cover of the book had the words, The Smiling, Proud Wanderer written on it. This was the most well-preserved novel of Jin Yong's pre-Great Destruction novels. Even after 1,000 years, it was still very popular among readers. Even Gu Yun, the Sword Maiden, was no exception. On the upper bunk of Qingpin and Gu Yun, the heavenly sword was constantly snoring. Ever since the heavenly sword had been repaired, it had become exceptionally sleepy. In the past, the heavenly sword would not fall asleep no matter how much it drank. However, now, even a sip of wine would cause it to fall asleep uncontrollably. Gohan suspected that something had gone wrong when the heavenly sword had been repaired. Liu Lei had also questioned the swordsmith, who had repaired the heavenly sword. However, the swordsmith had sworn on his honor that he had not done anything to the heavenly sword. After the heavenly sword had been repaired, it had become like this. Gohan did not have any objections to this. On the contrary, because of this, Gohan had saved tens of thousands of RMB on alcohol every day. It had also made the whole world a lot quieter. The sleeping heavenly sword was the cutest heavenly sword. Go and practice the basic sword technique 10 more times, Gohan said to the grumbling Lu Shihua beside him. Lu Shihua stuck out his tongue, picked up a wooden sword, and stood up. The room Gohan was in was a small room separated from the armored train. It was only 3 meters long and 4 meters wide. The space was very small, and there were even 2 lower bunk beds. There was not much space for Lu Shihua to practice his sword technique. Therefore, Lu Shihua's basic sword technique was very restricted, and he would hit the bed from time to time. However, Lu Shihua did not complain, nor did he complain about anything. He only continued to modify his movement technique, making it more agile and nimble. Seeing this, Gohan secretly nodded his head. Lu Shihua was indeed an excellent disciple. Lu Shihua was done with the sword technique. Just as he was about to practice it again, there was a knock on the door. "Please come in." The person who came in was none other than Kurakin, who had pulled Gohan back at the last moment. "Hey, what a rare guest. You actually came to look for me." When Gohan saw Kurakin come in, he was surprised. After the impeachment of the Emperor bloodline, Gohan had visited Kurakin 3 times, but he had been rejected. He did not expect Kurakin to take the initiative to look for him on the armored train. "I have something to tell you." Kurakin did not walk in. He just leaned against the door and looked at Gohan coldly. "That Jin Yujia is from the Lu clan. Her mother is the sword spirit Mu Shui. You have to be careful. Don't get tricked by her without knowing." "The sword spirit Mu Shui has a daughter? I remember that she has always been single on the official information," Gohan said in astonishment. "Jin Yujia is his illegitimate daughter. Other than the Shi clan and the Lu clan, only my father knows about this. That's all I have to say. Goodbye." After saying that, Kurakin was about to leave. "Please wait," Gohan said immediately. "I haven't thanked you yet. You don't owe me anything." Kurakin shook his head. He had already taken a step out of the door. However, he felt a gust of wind blow past his ear. He took a step back and the door closed again. Gohan was blocking his way. "Why do you keep me at a distance? I just want to say a word of thanks to you. Could it be that you're afraid of my thanks?" Gohan said with a smile. "It's just a thank you. Who cares about such a boring thing?" Kurakin's voice was a little low. It was completely different from the confident tone of a Chunibyu. Since Ju Wudao's death, Kurakin seemed to have changed into a different person. The Chunibyu aura seemed to have disappeared from his body. "I care. Without your 1,000,000 votes, I wouldn't be who I am now. Lu Shihua also wouldn't be the Lu Shihua she is now," Gohan said sincerely. "This is what you deserve. You saved my life and Yuzhong City. There are some inside stories that others don't know, but I know very clearly. Without you, the entire Yuzhong City would no longer exist. It was ridiculous that those idiots from the Dishan sect thought that they were so great. Those old bastards from the Dishan sect thought that they were great. When Yuzhong City was in danger, they hid in Mount D and didn't dare to come out. When my father's position was empty, they started to scheme. Even if you weren't the Sword Pavilion Master, I wouldn't have voted for them," Kurakin said while gritting his teeth. His words revealed his anger towards Mount D and the others. "No matter what, I have to thank you," Gohan said again. "I believe that everyone has heard from the conversation just now that on the day of the impeachment of the Emperor bloodline, the inexplicable 1,000,000 extra votes in the Bao Jian group did not come from anyone else, but from Julren, who was in front of Guhan. He was the one who gave Guhan 1,000,000 vote. So the question was, Kurakin was only a sword bearer. He should only have 1,000 vote. Why did he have 1,000,000 votes? The reason was simple. It was because of his father, Gu Wudao. According to the rules of every base city, when a sword-bearer risked his life for the safety of the base city and prevented a fatal incident from happening in Yuzhong City, the descendant of the sword-bearer would enjoy the same treatment as the sword-bearer himself for 3 years. Kurakin's father, Gu Wudao, had saved the lives of thousands of sword-bearers on the Plum Ridge. As Gu Wudao's son, Ku Rak-in naturally enjoyed the treatment of a sword-bearer at the Legend of Sword Realm for 3 years. There were many aspects of this treatment, including welfare, food, accommodation, and, of course, the right to vote. Therefore, when Ku Rak-in voted, he actually enjoyed the right to vote as a sword-bearer at the Legend of Sword Realm. Sword-bearers at the Legend of Sword Realm had 1 million votes, and he had cast 1 million vote. That was the origin of Gohan's 1 million vote. Without Ku Rak-in's support, Gohan would have been defeated that day. If you really want to thank me, please answer a question for me. Ku Rak-in looked at Lu Shihua. Why did you pass the position of cabinet master to her? Because. Before Gohan could answer, the armored train suddenly came to an emergency stop. Lu Shihua lost his balance and fell onto the bed. Only Gohan and Ku Rak-in seemed to have violated the law of inertia. They didn't move even when the train came to an emergency stop. Oh no, stop the train. Something must have happened outside. I have to take a look. Ku Rak-in rushed out without hesitation. Gohan shook his head and followed him. Chapter 686. What's going on? Gohan and Ku Rak-in got off the armored hover car together. They saw quite a few sword-wielders getting off with them. They were all surrounding the front of the train, poking their heads out and pointing. They didn't know what they were doing. The road ahead has been completely destroyed, one of the sword-wielders said. Gohan's figure flashed and appeared in front of the train. Sure enough, the highway overpass had been broken. Looking around, he couldn't see where the other end of the broken bridge was. Gohan could see at least 3 to 4 kilometers away at a glance, which meant that the destroyed highway was at least more than 4 kilometers away. About 12 kilometers of the highway has been completely destroyed. A sword wielder suddenly flew down from the sky and landed next to Gohan. This was the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit, who was responsible for leading the team. Only Spirit Sword Wielder could fly, so the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit went to check on the damage to the highway. The result wasn't good. A full 12 kilometers of highway had been destroyed. This wasn't a simple repair job. Dean, what should we do next? Do you need my help? Gohan asked the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit. Haha, Comrade Gohan, you've definitely never been on an armored hover car before. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit laughed. When it comes to repairing roads, even if you want to do it yourself, you won't be able to help much. It's better to leave it to the machines. You guys just need to stay in the train and rest. After saying this, the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit flew back into the train. Although Gohan's knowledge was vast, he didn't know everything like the back of his hand. For example, he didn't know much about armored hover trains. Fortunately, there was information about this in his personal terminal. After looking through it, Gohan finally understood the reason. It turned out that because of Yuan Ko's destruction, armored hover cars often encountered these kinds of road cracks. As a result, all the armored hover cars produced in the future were equipped with an automatic road repair system. This was a large road repair vehicle that was attached to the front of the armored hover car. Under normal circumstances, this vehicle was installed in a resource metal box. Whenever the road was damaged, it would be installed in front of the armored hover car. After pouring in the pavement materials, the construction vehicle could automatically repair the damaged highway. As long as there were enough materials, even a highway that was hundreds of meters long could be repaired. Digging holes in mountains and building bridges in rivers, he was omnipotent. Because the highways were often destroyed by Yuan Ko, the armored hovercraft had to repair the roads in addition to being used for transportation. Repairing the 12-kilometer-long highway was not difficult, but the biggest problem was that it would take time. The repair speed of the construction vehicle was about 1 kilometer per hour, which meant that the armored hovercraft would have to stay in this area for the next 12 hours, unable to move quickly. Once it was attacked by Yuan Ko, it would have to defend with all its might. There was no way to escape. Fortunately, Yuzhong City had already anticipated this situation, so they had prepared 5 times more sword-bearers than usual to protect the armored hover train. There was nothing more to say. All the sword-bearers returned to the armored hovercraft. However, the armored hovercraft's 8 radars were all turned on, carefully scanning everything within a 100-kilometer radius. Under the scanning of these radars, except for a few rare types of Yuan-ko, all Dragon class and below Yuan-ko had nowhere to hide. At the same time, all the observation windows of the armored hovercraft were opened. There were 10 sword-bearers taking turns to observe the situation outside through these windows. Once they found anything out of the ordinary, they would immediately report it. For safety's sake, the conductor also ordered the train's dimensional protection system to be turned on. Although this dimensional wall protection system was smaller than all the dimensional wall protection systems in Yuzhong City, it was still a genuine dimensional wall protection system with 4 million energy values. This amount of energy points might not be able to withstand a few attacks from a universe-level Yuan-ko, but it could serve as a warning. There wouldn't be a situation where a universe-level Yuan-ko would be able to get close to them without them noticing. All in all, the armored hovercraft's defense system was very complete. Unless they encountered a universe-level Yuan-ko, they would be able to last 5 to 6 minutes. Even if they couldn't defend, they would still have a chance to escape. It's okay, rest well. After returning to his room, Gohan faintly said to Lucifer. After that, he closed his eyes and laid on the bed, as if he had already fallen asleep. Master, Senior Ju's question just now. Lu Shihua recalled the question Ku Rock-in had just asked, and her heart palpitated. 20 days had passed since the impeachment of Emperor Bloodline. During these 20 days, Lu Shihua had been thinking about this question all the time, but she didn't have the guts to ask Gohan. It wasn't until today, when Ku Rock-in asked this question, that she finally couldn't suppress her curiosity and asked Gohan. After the impeachment of Emperor Bloodline was finally announced, Gohan suddenly won with 1 million votes. Lu Shihua was cheering for her master. Gohan suddenly pulled Lu Shihua to his side. As he patted Lu Shihua's head, he announced to the Yuzhong City audience through the live broadcast, "From now on, I, Gohan, will resign from the position of Sword Pavilion Master and pass the position to my disciple, Lu Shihua." What? Hearing Gohan's words, everyone, including Lu Lei and Lu Shihua, was dumbfounded. What did that mean? Didn't you, Gohan, win? Why are you resigning? This is one of the 2 highest positions in Yuzhong City. The dignified Sword Pavilion Master. How many people would risk their lives to get this position, and you're resigning just like that? More importantly, you said you would pass the position to Lu Shihua. Who is this Lu Shihua? Since Lu Shihua is your disciple, and you are a famed sword-bearer, according to common logic, isn't your disciple a treasured sword-bearer? He might even be an ancient sword-bearer. Gohan ignored the crowd's discussion and pulled Lu Shihua to face him. Solemnly, he asked her, "Lu Shihua of Yuzhong City, are you willing to take over the position of Yuzhong City's 27th Sword Pavilion Master from me?" Hearing Gohan's question, Lu Shihua instinctively wanted to reject it. However, when she saw the determination in Gohan's eyes, she could not bring herself to reject it. Instead, she nodded and said, "I'm willing." For Lu Shihua, it felt like he was saying these words at a wedding. Thus, in the dead silence, Lu Shihua successfully took over the position of Sword Pavilion Master and became the 27th Sword Pavilion Master of Yuzhong City. She was also the first person in the human world to take over the position of Sword Pavilion Master as an ordinary person in the past 1,000 years. Why do you think? Gohan did not directly answer Lu Shihua's question. Instead, he asked her a question. Lu Shihua stuttered for a long time but could not say the second word. Do you think I'm purposely making those old guys from Mount Emperor angry? Gohan said what Lu Shihua was thinking. Do you think you're just a tool for me to vent my anger? Lu Shihua did not speak. Her silence was a tacit agreement. Whatever you think, You're right, but also wrong. If you really want to know the answer to this question, wait until the day you become an Emperor Sword-bearer. I'll tell you then. Gohan closed his eyes again. Jiandi. These two words were completely illusory to Lu Shihua. Only one sword emperor could be born out of 100,000 sword-bearers. How could she, Lu Shihua, become one of these 100,000 sword-bearers? This was simply impossible. Master, I feel like I'm a joke now. Everyone on the forum is scolding me. They say I'm the most useless sword pavilion master since ancient times. They even said a lot of nasty things. Master, please take back your words. I really can't be the sword pavilion master. I've been in the sword pavilion for 10 days, and even the attendants didn't look me in the eye. I'm a complete joke. Lu Shihua's eyes were filled with tears when he said this. Under Gohan and Lu Lei's coercion, she had stayed in Sword Pavilion for 10 days. She had taken over all the work in Sword Pavilion. These 10 days were an unforgettable experience for her. In these 10 days, no one had ever taken the initiative to speak to her, and no one had even looked at her. It was as if she was staying on an isolated island in the middle of the sea, and this island was only the size of a foot. All she could do every day was stand on the island and be exposed to the sun. These 10 days of living had exhausted her, and she screamed herself hoarse. You're a joke now. However, when you become an Emperor Sword-level sword wielder, this joke will no longer be a joke. It will become a myth. Do you understand? Lu Shihua could only nod. However, she really did not understand. According to the plot of all novels, within the 12 hours of waiting in the armored levitating train, there would definitely be Yuan Ko attacking. Then, there would be a fierce battle. The main character would perform bravely and defeat all the Yuan Ko, ushering in the climax of the plot. Unfortunately, things did not develop according to this plot. After 12 hours, when they woke up, everything was normal. The broken highway had also been repaired. Of course, this period of time was not peaceful. It was said that the sword wielder in charge of guarding killed more than 400 Yuan Ko. However, none of these Yuan Ko were above dragon level. There was no need for Gohan to do anything. However, it was worth mentioning that the highway's road surface was still very badly damaged. Along the way, most of the time was used to repair the highway's road surface. When they were halfway through the journey, a whole 4 days had passed. There were only 4 days left before the octagon of the 8 academies. The Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit had already prepared 2 countermeasures. Once it discovered that there was a large section of the road in front of them that had been destroyed, it would immediately bring Gohan and the others to Yanjing City in an even faster levitating flying car. The Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit's preparations were not in vain. On the 5th day, it discovered a section of the road that was more than 20 kilometers long. However, the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit's second countermeasure could not be used. The culprit who had destroyed this section of the road was currently fighting in front of them. If this had happened before the apocalypse, this scene would have been like a Chinese TV series with maximum realistic effect. Ultraman Tyro vs. Ultraman Savon was a little excited just thinking about it. Chapter 687. It's actually an Ultraman. This kind of Yuan Ko hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. At the intersection of the highway, Gohan and the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit stood together, watching the earth-shattering battle between the Yuan Ko. I don't know how many hundreds of years it has been, but this is definitely the first time I've seen it in my life. This is the legendary Yuan Ko Ultraman. It's really huge. The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit clicked its tongue in wonder. It was also amazed by Ultraman, a Yuan Yen that only existed in legends. Even if there were frequent fights between Yuan Ko Ultramans, logically speaking, Yuan Ko Ultramans of the same race should be relatively united. However, the battle between the two Ultramans was extremely fierce and tragic. The battle between the two Ultramans was definitely a battle of fists and flesh. Every punch could cause the surface of the opponent's body to wrinkle, as if the opponent's skin was beaten into a leather case. Occasionally, a fist would not hit the opponent's body but hit the ground instead, creating a deep pit that was more than 10 meters deep. This was definitely the full strength of the Ultramans. What was even more obvious was that the two gems on the two Ultraman's bodies were flashing at the same time, and they were even making beeping sounds that sounded like an alarm. Anyone who had some understanding of Ultramans would know that this meant that the energy in the Ultraman's body was already less than 30%. Once this alarm stopped, the two Ultramans would return to their human form and completely lose their ability to fight. These two Ultramans are at least 60 to 70 meters tall. Looking at the two Ultramans that were fighting, the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit guessed. Ultraman Tyler, 53 meters tall, weighs 55,000 tons, moves at Mach 1, jumps up to 600 meters, and has a wrist strength of more than 160,000 tons. Facing the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit's question, Gohan silently answered, "Oh? There's information about Ultraman Tyler in the personal terminal? Why don't I know about it?" The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit asked curiously. "There's no information about him in the personal terminal. It's hidden in my memory. Ultraman Tyro is a free person. According to the agreement between us and the free people, we can't store any information about the free person other than their appearance. At least, we can't store it in something that's visible like a personal terminal," Gohan replied indifferently. "Oh, I understand. There are no such things in the open, but there are still things in the dark." The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit curled its lips. "I didn't expect one of these two Ultraman to be Ultraman Tyler. This is a little troublesome. What should we do? Should I wait here for them to finish fighting, or should I help Ultraman Tyro?" Ultraman Tyro was a free spirit, which meant that Yuan Ko had his own free will, just like Misaka Mikoto. He also belonged to the Freedom City, but he was very active during a certain period of time. For about 200 years, Ultraman Tyler had a very good relationship with humans. He would help humans fight on various occasions and protect their safety. He was one of humanity's best friends. However, for some unknown reason, Ultraman Tyler disappeared from the sight of humans in the blink of an eye. He had not appeared for hundreds of years. If he remembered correctly, this was the first time Ultraman Tyler appeared in front of humans after disappearing for hundreds of years. Let's wait and see. Ultraman Tyler is the leader of all Ultramans. It shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with an Ultraman that's a head shorter than him. Gohan thought about the description of Ultraman Tyler's personality in the information. Ultraman Tyler did not like others to help him if it was within his capabilities. Hence, Gohan said so. Although the two Ultramans were equally large in size, a closer look would reveal that the Ultraman with two horns on his forehead was a head taller than the other Ultraman with a chain-like ornament hanging on his chest. For Ultramans, height generally determined the size of their strength. Of course, there were exceptions, such as a certain neck. However, after observing for a while, Gohan and Tiger Roar's Sword Spirit found that something was wrong. The Ultraman with two horns on his head seemed to be suppressed by the other Ultraman. In the end, Ultraman Tyler was completely suppressed on the ground by the other Ultraman. At the same time, a boomerang-like object on the other Ultraman's head suddenly emitted a dazzling radiance. Then, the boomerang flew out from the Ultraman's head and transformed into a sharp knife. "Oh no, I'm afraid this is an ultimate move. Ultraman Tyler will be in danger. Senior Tiger Roar, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to help." Although they did not know what happened to Ultraman Tyler in the past hundreds of years and why he disappeared, Ultraman Tyler was indeed humanity's best friend. But before Ultraman Tyler disappeared, he was indeed humanity's best friend. He had saved the lives of many human sword-bearers, and one of them was even the Sword Emperor. Humans could not watch Ultraman Tyler get injured or even die. "Haha, even if you don't say it, I want to do it too." Tiger Roar's Sword Spirit laughed and patted Gohan's shoulder. Ultraman Tyler is a meteor stage Yuan Ko. Since this unknown Ultraman can suppress Ultraman Tyler, then his strength is at least a meteor stage Yuan Ko. Moreover, you can't fly. Student Gohan, you stay here and protect the others. Leave this Ultraman to me. After saying that, Tiger Roar's sword spirit flew up and laughed at the Ultraman who was beating up Ultraman Tyler. You big guy, you've found the right person today. You just fell into my hands. There's no one more suitable than you to be my opponent, Yuan Ko. After saying that, Tiger Roar's sword spirit whistled. Then, the armored levitating train shook. A burly, fierce-looking man, oh no, a woman walked out of the carriage. Matchstick, why did you call me? Can't you see that I'm eating? This burly woman actually called Tiger Roar's sword spirit a matchstick. Although Tiger Roar's sword spirit's body couldn't be said to be fat, it definitely couldn't be said to be thin either. A more accurate description would be that he was relatively strong. The description of a matchstick definitely didn't match him. But then again, compared to this burly woman, Tiger Roar's sword spirit was indeed a matchstick. Hearing this woman call it a matchstick, Tiger Roar's sword spirit didn't get angry. Instead, it smiled bitterly. My ancestor, I found an opponent for you. That's why I called you out in a hurry. I'm afraid that if I don't have this opponent, you won't feel comfortable. Oh, there's actually such a good opponent. The burly woman glanced at the direction where the two Ultraman were fighting. Her face immediately lit up and she shouted excitedly. Not bad, not bad. They're indeed two good opponents. I like to fight with opponents with similar body sizes. Usually, those small Yuan Ko with thin arms and legs would die with a single stomp. They couldn't even move their muscles and bones. This type of body is the best, the best. After saying that, the burly sword lady started to run quickly. Although this sword lady's body was huge, weighing at least 150 kilograms, her speed when she ran with all her might wasn't slow at all. What was even more surprising was that she didn't use her two legs to run. Instead, she ran on all fours like a tiger. Then, this sword lady leaped from the crack in the highway and leaped high into the sky. Her body then started to change violently. Her body instantly became longer and wider, finally turning into an Ultraman-like giant. The sword maiden's body, which was originally full of fat, turned into chunks of strong muscles after the transformation. Every muscle was bulging, as if it was filled with explosive power. These chunks of muscles were filled with a sense of beauty. They were more than 10 times more beautiful than those bodybuilders. This sword lady didn't participate in the Miss Bodybuilder selection. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given the first place to anyone else. This sword lady is... Gohan recalled the relevant information about this sword lady. She's the Tiger Soul Sword. How is it? Is it your first time seeing her? Do you think it's very spectacular? Lady Dragon Spring suddenly appeared beside Gohan like a ghost. However, the word spectacular was used to describe a sword lady. It was worth carefully savoring. So she's the Tiger Soul Sword Lady. It's really amazing. Gohan nodded. He knew this Tiger Soul Sword. Tiger Soul Sword was considered to be a very young sword lady in the Sword Lady group. She was also the youngest among all the Spirit Sword rank sword ladies. The Tiger Soul Ring was a sword lady that was born 150 years ago. Speaking of which, her experience was somewhat legendary. It was said that she was the weapon of the ancestor of China, Qi Yu. It was originally a saber, but there was only a fragment in the ancient tomb that suppressed Qi Yu's head. Looking at the size, it should be a Tiger Soul Saber that was equally divided into 5 parts, and this was only one of them. Later, people speculated according to history that when Emperor Huang Xianyuan suppressed Qi Yu the Great, he was afraid that the Tiger Soul Saber would cause trouble again, so he simply divided the Tiger Soul Saber into 5 parts and suppressed it together with its master in Qi Yu's ancient tomb. Even a complete Tiger Soul Saber couldn't become a sword lady. This 1/5 fragment was not taken seriously by the person who discovered it, so he simply gave it to the museum as an exhibit. In the end, the extremely down-and-out Grandmaster Qing Xing went to the museum to visit and discovered this fragment. Then, he risked universal condemnation to steal this fragment. After studying it for a whole 20 years, he forged this saber fragment into a sword, which was the current Tiger Soul sword. Later on, the matter of Great Grandmaster Qing Xing was discovered. When the Commission for Discipline Inspection was preparing to lock him up, a famous sword-level swordsman of the Sword Council coincidentally picked up this sword. As a result, this sword began to synchronize. Only then did the world discover that the Tiger Soul sword was actually a spirit sword-level swordswoman, and that famous sword-level swordsman naturally became a spirit sword-level swordsman. The Tiger Soul sword also became one of the few natural sword ladies that were born in the hands of humans after the apocalypse. Grandmaster Qing Xing also became a grandmaster from an ordinary sword blacksmith, and his name went down in history. Chapter 688. Perhaps it was because it had stayed with Qi Yu's head. The Tiger Soul sword had inherited Qi Yu's consciousness. It had Qi Yu's memories and personality, which was why it was as warlike as Qi Yu. Its combat power was also extraordinary, and it could be ranked in the top 10 among the famed swordsmen. According to the information recorded in Grandmaster Green Hang's memoirs, if one could find the remaining 4 pieces of the Tiger Soul saber and combine them into one, the Tiger Soul sword could very likely become an Emperor swordwoman. Dragon Spring Queen doesn't like the Tiger Soul Queen? Gohan did not hide his feelings and asked the Dragon Spring Queen directly. That woman is an idiot. Only an idiot would like her. The Dragon Spring Queen spat. It was obvious that the Dragon Spring Queen and the Tiger Soul Queen did not live happily together. This was not surprising. The Dragon Spring Queen was a clean-living, hygienic, shrewd and capable swordwoman. She could even play the role of a secretary occasionally. However, the Tiger Soul Queen, you can imagine it yourself. I won't go into detail. Although this woman is stupid, her saber skills are not bad. If you want to achieve greater things, you should take a good look at her saber skills. The Dragon Spring Queen seemed to have said this to Gohan. After saying this, she left Gohan. It was also because of the Dragon Spring Queen's reminder that Gohan began to pay attention to this battle. It was a pity that Gohan had not seen the Tiger Soul Queen's saber skills in a normal battle. This was a one-sided battle. After the Tiger Soul Queen enlarged and entered the battlefield, the outcome of the entire battle had been decided. The Tiger Soul Queen was 100 meters tall after her enlarged form. Compared to the Ultraman who was 50 meters tall and 40 meters tall, she was twice as tall. In front of the Tiger Soul Queen, the 2 Ultraman were like half-grown children. The Tiger Soul Queen grabbed the Ultraman's neck with her hand and the Ultraman was lifted up like a chicken. Then, she flung him a few kilometers away. The unlucky Ultraman had just fallen to the ground and crushed hundreds of trees. Before he could come to his senses, Tiger Soul Queen grabbed his legs and smashed him on the ground like a wooden club. He was completely stunned by Tiger Soul Queen's beating. He didn't even have a chance to fight back. After smashing him about 100 times, the Ultraman's body was lifted over her head and thrown more than 10 kilometers away. It was so far away that it was out of Gohan's sight. Oh, this Yuanko's bones are not bad. He is quite resistant to being smashed. He didn't die from this. Gohan could not see where the Ultraman was, but he could not escape the Tiger Soul Queen's eyes. The Tiger Soul Queen's voice was very soft. This soft voice was relative to her size, but when it reached Gohan's ears, her voice was like a huge bell, and it hurt his eardrums. Hey, this guy seems to be about to use some ultimate move. The Tiger Soul Queen showed a surprised expression. Then, in the blink of an eye, a blood-colored broadsword appeared in her hand. The Tiger Soul Queen spun the sword in front of her and blocked it. Then, a dazzling light that was as bright as a pine needle hit the broadsword. This is the Ultraman's ultimate move, the Ultraman's ultimate move. Gohan knew that almost all Ultraman had this ultimate move. They would make a strange pose, and the light of this ultimate move would shoot out from their forearms. The power of this light was not weak. If the physical body was hit by this light, even a U-realm Yuan-ko would be at a great disadvantage. What was even more terrifying was that this light could instantly kill Yuan-ko, who was below the meteor realm. It could cause the opponent's body to explode from the inside and turn them into a pile of bubbles. Most of the meteor realm Yuan-ko's attacks could only instantly kill Yuan-ko, who was below the dragon realm. However, the puzzling thing was that this light could only be used when the Ultraman was in a critical situation. Unless they were fighting to the last moment or their body was about to run out of energy, the Ultraman would not use this ultimate move even if they died. It was unknown who made this rule. What a powerful ultimate move! After blocking Ultraman's ultimate move, the Queen of Tiger Soul glanced at her Tiger Soul sword. The center of the Tiger Soul sword had already been charred black. Oh my god, this is bad! The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit in the sky saw the state of the Tiger Soul sword and slapped its thigh in annoyance. It's over. The repair fee will cost at least 70,000 to 80,000 hero coins. When will I be able to save up 1 million hero coins? It turned out that the Tiger Roar Sword Spirit was feeling sorry for its hero coins. F***ck, you actually dared to hurt my spirit sword. I'm going to cut you into 5 pieces and suppress them in 5 different places. It was probably because of her unforgettable failure when she was alive. Whenever the Tiger Soul Queen was angry, she liked to divide her enemies into 5 pieces and suppress them in 5 different places. Unfortunately, she had never been able to do this. It was not because the Tiger Soul Queen was just joking, but because once Yuan-ko was done, he would be sucked away by the dimensional whirlpool. Where would she find the corpse to divide into 5 pieces? Your Highness, please stop. Suddenly, a deep male voice said. From the volume of the voice, it seemed to be a voice that could only come from a creature of the same size as the Tiger Soul Queen. This voice obviously came from Ultraman Tyler, who was lying on the ground. Oh, there's another one here. I forgot. The Tiger Soul Queen turned around and looked at Ultraman Tyler with a strong fighting spirit in her eyes. She grinned and said, "You little guy, quickly get up and fight 300 rounds with me." That opponent just now did not stop because he was straightforward. It was over so quickly. Don't worry, this time I will definitely preserve 70% to 80% of my strength. I promise to fight 300 rounds with you. Sword Lady, I, Tyler, am not your match. We are all friends and comrades. From the tone of Ultraman Tyler's voice, one could tell that he was a little timid. However, the problem was that Ultraman Tyler had a poker face. Although his tone was timid, his expression did not change at all. He still looked like he was full of fighting spirit. The Queen of Tiger Soul was a stupid person. She could hear the meaning in the other party's tone. Just by looking at the other party's expression, she felt that the other party wanted to fight 300 rounds with her. Therefore, without saying a word, she rushed towards Ultraman Tyler and attacked his chest. Ultraman Tyler was already injured and did not have much energy in his body. How could he be a match for the Tiger Soul Queen? Although the Tiger Soul Queen had held back 70% to 80% of her strength, Ultraman Tyler was still unable to resist. He was directly sent flying and fell on his face. Ayaya, why are you still so weak? I will use half of my strength to fight with you. The Tiger Soul Queen's interest did not diminish. She grinned and was about to attack Ultraman Tyler again. However, this time, before she could touch Ultraman Tyler, she felt that her waist was hugged by something. For a while, she could not move at all. The Tiger Soul Queen looked down and saw that the Ultraman, who had been thrown more than 10 kilometers away, had run back and hugged her waist. Little bastard, you are courting death. How dare you touch my waist? I am still a virgin, do you know that? The Tiger Soul Queen was furious. She picked up her Tiger Soul sword and slashed at the Ultraman's head. If this slash landed, unless the Ultraman's defense was amazing, he would definitely die. Don't hurt my brother. At the critical moment, Ultraman Tyler got up from the ground again. When the Tiger Soul sword was less than 100 meters away from Ultraman's head, he used both his hands to grab the Tiger Soul sword and stopped it. Boy, you have guts. I like it. Although the Tiger Soul Queen said that she liked it, she did not slack off in the slightest. She directly kicked the vital spot between Ultraman Tyler's legs. Then, Ultraman Tyler was sent flying again. He kept rolling on the ground while holding his little brother. He had completely lost his ability to fight. You still won't let go of me. This time, the Tiger Soul Queen did not use her sword. Instead, she picked up her fist, which was the size of 4 rooms and 2 living rooms, and fiercely smashed it on the Ultraman's head. The boomerang on his head was smashed until it was deformed. The 2 salted egg-like eyes were also smashed until they bulged out. The Ultraman, who had been constantly flashing, turned into a beam of light and disappeared. He died just like that? Isn't he a little too weak? The Tiger Soul Queen sighed reluctantly. It was rare for her to have an opponent who could let her play freely. It would be a pity for him to die just like that. No, Ultraman did not seem to be dead. Out of the corner of her eye, the Queen of Tiger's Soul noticed that there was a person lying on the ground near her feet. Although the Tiger Soul Queen was not very smart, she had very good eyesight. She could guarantee that there was no human there just now. This is not a human. This person has the smell of a dimensional space. This is a humanoid Yuan-ko. The Tiger Soul Queen quickly distinguished that the unconscious person was not a real human. She raised her foot and was about to step on him as if she was stepping on a bug. No, no, no. At the sight of this scene, Ultraman Tyler, who was rolling on the ground while clutching his little brother, let out a shrill cry. It was unknown whether it was because his elder brother was about to die under the feet of the Queen of Tiger Soul that he felt despair, or because his little brother was in too much pain. Ultraman Tyler's miserable cries did not have any effect. In the blink of an eye, the Queen of Tiger Soul stepped on him. To be on the safe side, the Queen of Tiger Soul stepped on him a few times after stepping on him. Ultraman Tyler's salted egg-like eyes turned white and he fainted. He could not maintain his Ultraman form and turned into a human wearing strange leather clothes. Chapter 689. Brother! Brother! Higashi Taro dreamt that he was happily dancing with his brother on the grass. The two of them were talking and laughing, calling each other's names. They were very happy. However, just as he was feeling happy, a pair of black hairy feet suddenly descended from the sky and stepped on his brother's head, turning him and his brother into a pile of meat paste. Brother! Higashi Taro let out a scream, and then woke up from the nightmare. Through his somewhat hazy eyes, he discovered that he seemed to be lying on a bed, surrounded by 4 or 5 humans who were nervously staring at him. Mr. Taylor, are you okay? A somewhat muscular man asked with concern. I say, Matchstick, what are you worried about? I didn't even step on him. How could he be okay? Said a somewhat greasy female voice. Hearing this voice, Higashi Taro could not help but shiver. Inexplicably, he thought of that terrifying woman. There was actually a woman in this world who was taller and more terrifying than Ultraman. This was really too scary. Alright, stop talking. I still have a few kilograms of beef in my room. It's all good Kobe beef. If you don't eat it, I'll give it to someone else, said the muscular man. There was no doubt that this powerful man was the Tiger Roar Sword Spirit. Then, Higashi Taro heard a series of thumping sounds, and the whole ground trembled with the sound. Obviously, the greasy woman had run off to eat her Kobe beef. Have the humans already conquered Japan? Hearing the name of Kobe beef, Taro said with some excitement in his heart. No, we humans do not have the ability to reclaim Japan. This Kobe beef is produced by a cattle farm called Kobe, so it is called Kobe beef. This beef tastes really bad, even worse than artificial beef. It's just that the price is a little cheaper," said the tiger roar sword spirit with a smile. "So that's how it is. I thought Kobe had already been conquered. Sigh, it would be great if this was true. I haven't eaten Kobe beef for more than 700 years. Higashi Taro said with some disappointment. However, he quickly realized that this was not the time for him to be disappointed. The most important thing was to figure out how his brother was now. "How is my brother now? Is his body okay? Can it be pieced together? Let him rest in peace." However, he immediately realized that his brother shouldn't have a corpse. It had long been taken away by the dimensional vortex. Therefore, he became even sadder, and 2 drops of hot tears flowed uncontrollably from his eyes. "What remains? What do you mean by resting in peace? We didn't die." The tiger roar sword spirit patted its head. "Mr. Tyler, we didn't do anything to your brother. Isn't he lying next to you?" Hearing this, Higashi Taro immediately turned around and saw another man lying beside him. It was his brother, Zhu Xingtuan. "Brother!" Higashi Taro threw himself on Zhu Xingtuan's arm and cried for a while. When he finally stopped crying, he turned his head and spoke. His eyes were still hazy. "Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I thought my brother already." "All right, you don't have to thank us. We didn't help at all." The tiger roar sword spirit smiled bitterly. "Also, it seems that my sword mistress was more of a hindrance than a help. If not for her recklessness, the 2 of you wouldn't have been injured like this. I should apologize to you. As for the person who saved your brother, it wasn't me. It was Comrade Gohan." The tiger roar sword spirit pulled Gohan, who had been hiding behind it, to Higashi Taro and proudly introduced him. "It was Comrade Gohan who saved your brother. At the critical moment, it was Comrade Gohan who risked his life to run into the forest and saved your brother's body from under my sword mistress's feet. If you want to thank someone, thank him." "Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Comrade Gohan." Higashi Taro held Gohan's hand tightly. "I didn't expect that at such a young age, an ancient sword wielder, you would have such courage to save my brother from under that terrifying woman's feet. I, Higashi Taro, will never forget your great kindness." "Ahem. Mr. Taylor, you might be mistaken. He is not an ancient sword wielder. He is a true famed sword wielder," the tiger roar sword spirit reminded him. "Hey, don't tease me. I can tell that little brother Gohan is only a little over 18 years old. How could he be a famed sword wielder?" Higashikari Taro said, waving his hand. "I never lie, The sword spirit tiger still wanted to argue, but Gohan grabbed the sword spirit tiger's arm and said nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter what level I am. What's important is that we need to figure out what's going on. If this person is Mr. Tyler's brother, why would Mr. Tyler fight with his brother? First of all, please don't call me by my name, Taylor. That's just my universal name. When I'm in the human world, I hope that everyone will call me by my human name, Higashi Taro." Higashi Taro let out a long sigh and explained his situation. It turned out that Higashi Taro and his Ultraman brethren had been living in seclusion for the past few hundred years. They lived in a small area in Liberty City and lived a peaceful life. However, a few days ago, the Morals and Discipline Committee chair of Liberty City, Misaka Mikoto, returned from the human world and brought Higashi Taro an important piece of news. She said that she had found traces of a wild Ultraman near Yenjing City. Higashi Kotaro immediately left the Freedom City that he had been living in seclusion for hundreds of years and went to the area that Misaka Mikoto mentioned. After searching for a few days and nights, he finally found the wild Ultraman. Higashi Kotaro realized that the Ultraman was actually his older brother, Kevin Ultraman. Unlike Ultraman Tyler, who was already free, Ultraman Savon was deeply invaded by filth, to the point that he didn't recognize Ultraman as his younger brother. Higashi Taro wanted to bring the name of Zhu Juan, who was also Kevin's human form, back to Liberty City. Naturally, Zhu Juan refused, and the two of them started fighting. In the end, Zhu Juan transformed into his Ultraman form, and Higashi Taro had no choice but to fight in his Ultraman form. The battle between these two behemoths was naturally destructive. The highway that was more than 20 kilometers long was destroyed during this battle. Not long after the two of them fought, Gohan's armored hover train arrived. What happened after that was needless to say. The story that Higashi Kotaro told sounded reasonable and normal. However, there were still many suspicious points in it. For example, why did Higashi Mitsuro Taro suddenly go into seclusion and disappear from the human world? Why did Higashi Mitsuro Taro say that he was living with his people in the Freedom City? Why did he come out alone instead of bringing his people with him? Did he not understand the principle of strength in numbers? In any case, Gohan felt that the situation was not as simple as it seemed. However, Higashi Taro had been very kind to humans from the beginning. Even when Queen Tiger Soul beat the two of them up, kicked his little brother, and almost killed his brother, Higashi Taro did not show any signs of anger. On the contrary, he was very apologetic. With all these kind gestures, Gohan did not want to ask any more questions. After all, he would let the two brothers go halfway through the journey. He could not be bothered with what would happen next. Tyler, brother, save me. At this time, the sleeping Zhu Juan suddenly started moaning. It was obvious that this sleeping Ultraman was about to wake up. Big brother! Higashi Taro's expression tensed up. He extended a finger and tapped Zhu Juan's forehead. A purple light flashed, and Zhu Juan, who had been moaning, immediately stopped moaning. He no longer made any sound and fell back into a state of deep sleep. Mr. Higashi Taro, what are you doing? The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit asked curiously. Sigh, my big brother has just come to this world from the dimensional rift. He is still a Yuan Ko and not a free being like me. I can only seal his soul in his mind temporarily so that he cannot move or transform into an Ultraman. Otherwise, we will be in big trouble. Higashi Taro explained with a bitter smile. This explanation was very normal and logical. There did not seem to be any problems. Therefore, the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit nodded and said with some gratitude, Mr. Higashimitaru, you're really thoughtful. We almost forgot about this. If your brother transformed in the train, we would be finished. Our armored train would be scrapped. It's my duty, my duty. Higashi Taro pinched the corner of Zhu Juan's blanket. One more thing, one more thing, one more thing. Higashi Taro hesitated for a long time but did not say what was on his mind. The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit was extremely uncomfortable. It patted the bed and said, Higashi Taro, if you have something to say, just say it. As long as we can do it, we will help you. You are a friend of us humans. Our Yuzhong City was able to survive the invasion thanks to Miss Misaka Mikoto. There is no need for formalities between us. Alright, then I will say it directly. Higashi Taro took a deep breath. It's like this. I want to help my big brother get rid of the filth in his body, so I need the help of some tools. However, this tool is not in the Freedom City but in Swallow Capital City. Therefore, I hope to follow your train into Swallow Capital City and use that tool to get rid of the filth in my big brother's body. Sigh, what's the big deal? This is a small matter. The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit patted its chest. Don't worry, leave this matter to me. I will definitely help you contact Swallow Capital City. Thank you very much. Higashi Taro immediately thanked the Tiger Roar Sword Spirit. Coming out of the room that was temporarily given to Higashi Taro, Gohan looked a little hesitant. Dean Tiger Roar, there are many problems with this Ultraman Tyler. I'm afraid he is not here with good intentions. You can see that too? The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit pursed its lips. I already knew that there must be something wrong with this. Higashi Taro wasn't being honest. However, it doesn't matter. Since he wants to enter Swallow Capital City, he will behave himself on our train. He won't cause any trouble. I see. Gohan nodded. Let Swallow Capital City worry about this matter. After all, it's not up to us to let Higashi Taro enter Swallow Capital City. I didn't realize that you are also full of evil tricks. The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit smirked and patted Gohan on the shoulder. Looks like I have to apologize to you. I owe you 100,000 votes. Chapter 690. After the incident with Ultraman Tyro, there were no more strange incidents. It took them a whole day to repair the 20-kilometer highway that was destroyed by Ultraman Tyler. However, on this day, there weren't any powerful Yuan Shen that came to attack. The ones that came were just some small kittens and puppies. They were easily killed by the other sword bearers who were in charge of protecting the armored hover train. There was no need for Gohan and the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit to do anything. In fact, Gohan wanted to do something. After all, killing a Yuan Ko would give him some sword essence. Gohan now had 35,000 quarks of sword essence in his body. It might seem like a lot, but it was not enough in Gohan's eyes. No sword wielder would complain about having too little sword essence. Although Gohan wanted to kill the enemy, he was stopped by the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit. In the words of the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit, he and Gohan were both people of status. People of status naturally could not fight over food with these little guys. According to the unspoken rules, when sword bearers of different levels fought at the same time, the lower level Yuan Ko had to be dealt with by the lower level sword bearers. The higher level sword bearers couldn't eat Yuan Ko. Otherwise, the lower level sword bearers wouldn't be able to grow. Only the Flood Dragon and Dragon Yuan Ko could be dealt with by the famed sword bearers. However, because of Gohan's reputation and the fact that he was once the Sword Tower Master, even the Dragon Yuan Ko couldn't be dealt with by Gohan. Only when the Nether and Meteor Yuan Ko appeared would it be time for Gohan to make a move. During the whole journey to Yenjing City, apart from the Otto brothers, only the Nether Yuan Ko had appeared. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit even took care of Yuan Ko in the name of an elder. Gohan could only watch. Therefore, during the entire journey, Gohan didn't even move his hands, which really made his hands itch. Of course, Gohan did not care about these trivial matters. What gave Gohan a bigger headache were the two troublemakers, Qing Pin and Gu Yun. Because he was in a hurry when he set off, he actually forgot to ask when Mei Yun to prepare food for these two little devils. Originally, Gohan didn't care about this small matter, as the armored hover train also provided food. These two little devils wouldn't starve to death. But he never expected that the food on the hover train would be so terrible that even Gohan, who didn't care much about food, couldn't stand the taste. The two little devils, Gu Yun and Qing Pin, were naturally even more difficult to serve. On the first day, if it weren't for Gohan stopping them, Qing Pin would have beaten up the unlucky chef. This was also to take advantage of Gohan's inexperience. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit, who often rode the armored hover train, naturally knew what was going on. He had prepared a lot of food in his dimensional pocket, which was said to be made by his maid. Then, he brought the food in front of Gohan to show off, and in the end, all of it went into the shameless Qing Pin's stomach. After that, Qing Pin seemed to be enlightened and didn't pester Gohan anymore. She wandered around the carriage, relying on her cute face and chubby little body to win the favor of many sword bearers. When such a cute little thing asked you to eat something good, would you be willing to reject her? So, unknowingly, the food prepared by these sword bearers had all gone into Qing Pin's stomach. The only commendable thing was that Qing Pin didn't eat alone. She would bring back some delicious food every day and share it with Gu Yun and Gohan. So, Gohan actually ate pretty well these few days. He had tasted all kinds of delicious food, and the food he ate was even better than at home. But when these sword bearers realized all of this, it was already too late. More than half of the food in their dimensional pockets had already gone into the stomachs of Qin Pin and the Gu family. It was said that they spent their last day eating plain boiled rice or plain boiled noodles. So when these people saw Qin Pin in the future, their first reaction was to tightly cover their dimensional pockets, grit their teeth, and say that there was nothing delicious in their pocket. In any case, after experiencing some interesting things, the armored hover train finally arrived at the heart of the entire human world, the territory of Yanjing Mega Base City, and completed the entire mission without any mishaps. Among the 8 human base cities, the most commonly used ranking method was based on the population of the base city. Yuzhong City had a population of close to 40 million, and was ranked third among the 8 base cities. Of course, Yanjing City was ranked first. According to the 89th World Census conducted 3 years ago, Yanjing City had a total population of 110 million, which was equivalent to the total population of the base cities ranked at the bottom of the list. Yanjing City accounted for 1/3 of the world's population. Since the population of Yanjing City was equivalent to less than 3 times that of Yuzhong City, theoretically, the area of Yanjing City should also be 3 times that of Yuzhong City. In fact, the area of Yanjing City was about 30 times that of Yuzhong City. And Yanjing City was also the only mega-base city among the 8 base cities that had an unprecedented 6-dimensional walls. These 6-dimensional walls were known as Yanjing City's 6th ring. At this time, the armored hover train was slowly entering Yanjing City's 6th ring. The armored hover train wasn't directly allowed to enter the 6th ring. Instead, it stopped at a train station outside the 6th ring. According to the rules, the workers of Yanjing City had to inspect the armored hover train inside and out. Only after making sure that Yuan Ko wasn't hiding in the train could they let the armored hover train enter the city. There were no such restrictions for the passengers on the train. As long as the passenger's identity was verified, they could enter the 6th ring and take the special train from the 6th ring to the 4th ring, entering the core of Yuzhong City. However, the Tiger Sword Spirit and Gohan didn't leave the place. They entered Yanjing City first. Instead, they stood on the platform and looked up at the vast and magnificent Yanjing City. Was Yuzhong City big? Big. Very big. Standing outside Yuzhong City, the city walls were at least 100 meters tall. As far as the eye could see, the city walls were a huge arc. Even if you were 4 or 5 kilometers away from the city walls, you still wouldn't be able to see the 2 peaks of the city walls. The area of Yanjing City was 30 times larger than Yuzhong City. Then how big was Yanjing City? At this time, the train station that Gohan was at was about 10 kilometers away from the city walls of Yanjing City's 6th Ring Road. The city walls that were 300 meters tall in the information were not even as tall as a finger in Gohan's eyes. Even at such a distance, not only could Gohan not see the boundaries of the city walls, but he felt that the city walls were straight, without any curvature. This description might be boring, so let's use data to speak. According to people's calculations, Yuzhong City's diameter was 50 kilometers. If the city walls were all straightened, it would be 157 kilometers long. Yanjing City's city walls were 861 kilometers long, and its diameter was 274 kilometers. This was equivalent to the distance between Beijing and Shijiazhuang before the apocalypse. Students who were interested could draw a line on the map, connecting the center of Beijing and Shijiazhuang together. Then, using this line as the diameter, they could draw a circle. This would be the city limits of Yanjing City. Reading up to this point, readers might want to ask, just how amazing was the Kanzu who founded Yanjing City in the past? He actually led hundreds of thousands of human survivors to build such a huge city. The construction of the city required steel, stone bricks, labor, construction machinery, and a huge amount of dimensional crystal powder. These materials were piled up together to equal the volume of 5 or 6 mt. Was this something that hundreds of thousands of survivors who had nothing but their lives could create? This was even more unbelievable than telling everyone that the Great Wall was built in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day, and Yanjing City naturally wasn't built in a day either. In the beginning, the city that was built was only the current first ring road of Yanjing City, which was the size of the core area, and its diameter was only 20 kilometers. Later, as the population of Yanjing City continued to increase, the housing prices in Yanjing City reached an astronomical figure. A small room of 30 square meters could be squeezed up to 50 people. Moreover, such a small area could not satisfy the development of Yanjing City. Therefore, under the leadership of Jiandi at that time, Yanjing City began to expand. The original diameter of 20 kilometers was expanded to 50 kilometers, and a new wall was built. This was Yanjing City's second ring road. After that, Yanjing City's urban construction was a replica of this story. Whenever Yanjing City's strength was high enough to resist most of the Yuan-Ko's attacks, Yanjing City would start to expand the city again. Later on, there would be the third ring road, fourth ring road, fifth ring road, and sixth ring road. It was said that Yanjing City was about to run out of people to live in. The Sword Committee of Tianjin City was planning to prepare for the seventh ring road. Unfortunately, at this time, there was only an old Haotian Jiandi in their eyes. This plan was only on paper. When Yanjing City had more than 2 Jiandi, it would be the time to restart the construction of the seventh ring road. The visionaries of Yanjing City even had such a plan, which was to rely on the continuous expansion of Yanjing City to recapture the entire Earth and expel all the Yuan-Kos on Earth. According to the estimates of these visionaries, as long as Yanjing City was built to the 36th ring road, it would include more than half of the land of ancient Huaxia. Once Yanjing City was built to the 81st ring road, it would be able to recover the entire land of Asia. Until the 525th ring road was built, the entire world would be recovered by humans, and Yuan-Kos would be completely expelled from Earth. This plan was naturally an excellent plan, but Gohan felt that when humans realized this plan, Earth would probably be destroyed in the hands of humans. Comrade Gohan, this is your first time seeing Yanjing City, right? The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit suddenly let out a long sigh and asked Gohan. Chapter 691. That's right, this is my first time coming here and seeing Yanjing City. Gohan answered honestly. Then you should have some thoughts about it. People who come here for the first time will more or less have some thoughts. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit said again. Facing the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit's question, Gohan was silent for a moment and did not give any answer. What's wrong? Do you not know what to say? The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit laughed. Then let me teach you, what do you mean by Yanjing City is too big? Yanjing City is too spectacular. Yanjing City is really a miracle for mankind. Yanjing City is indeed the core of the human world. For example, you can say these words, they are all extremely appropriate. I have never thought about these things. Gohan suddenly sneered. I am thinking about this question. What question? The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit asked curiously. I am thinking, if I were to build such a city, how many years would it take? A smile hung on Gohan's face. Alright, stop joking around. The inspection of the armored hover train is almost done. We still have to escort Higashitaro into Yanjing City. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit only treated Gohan's words as a joke, and did not take it to heart. 20 years. Gohan suddenly stretched out 2 of his fingers and placed them in front of the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit's eyes. I think I will need about 20 years. 20 years? What are you planning to do? The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit was stunned at first, then stunned again. Don't tell me you plan to use 20 years to build a Yanjing City. Who can say for sure? Maybe 10 years will be enough. Gohan suddenly revealed an extremely carefree smile. He patted the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit's shoulder. Thank you, Lord Howling Tiger Sword Spirit. Recently, I have been a bit confused. I don't know what else to do other than revenge. Thanks to you, I finally know now. After saying that, Gohan turned around without hesitation and walked towards the armored hover train, no longer looking at Yanjing City. What the hell is in this guy's head? Hearing Gohan's words, the tiger's roar sword spirit could not help but shiver. Its evaluation of Gohan in its heart rose by several levels. This guy is either a genius or a madman. But no matter if he's a genius or a madman, the whole world will probably change because of him. I wonder if this change is good or bad. Higashi Taro and his brother were taken away by the 3 sword-bearers from Yanjing City. Before entering the station, the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit had contacted Yanjing City through the communication system and reported the situation of Higashi Taro and his brother in detail to Yanjing City. This even included their suspicions towards the 2 Ultraman brothers. Although the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit and Gohan both wanted to screw over Yanjing City was home to a large number of humans after all. If there was really something wrong with the Ultraman brothers and they entered Yanjing City because of their concealment, causing destruction and human deaths, the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit and Gohan would never be at ease for the rest of their lives. Therefore, the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit told Yanjing City the whole story. After that, what Yanjing City wanted to do was their own business. No matter how big the problem was, it had nothing to do with the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit and Gohan. As Higashi Taro and his brother left, the armored hover train was also thoroughly inspected. The entrance gate of the 6th Ring Road of Yanjing City slowly opened, and the armored hover train made by Gohan and the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit finally entered Yanjing City. The distance between the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road of Yanjing City was 25 kilometers, covering an area equivalent to 1/3 of the size of Yanjing City. Within such a large area, other than a few settlements, most of the places were not for humans to live in. Instead, they were filled with all kinds of factories, producing all kinds of daily necessities and industrial materials that Yanjing City needed. Not only the 6th Ring Road, but even the 5th Ring Road was in a similar situation, with more factories than humans. Only after entering the 4th Ring Road did they truly enter the world of human habitation. It was densely packed with humans, and the density was only slightly better than that of Yuzhong City. The reason for this was that Yanjing City was just too big, and the walls that Yanjing City needed to defend were just too long. Even if there was a swordsman every 10 meters, they would not be able to cover the entire 6th Ring Road. The biggest problem with Yanjing City's defense system was that once it encountered a large-scale attack by Yuan-ko, the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road would actually be very easily breached. Therefore, not only were there no humans living in the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road, they were also filled with all kinds of war traps and war facilities. The battles that Yuan-ko experienced after entering the city were even more difficult than the battles outside the city walls. This became the biggest advantage of Yanjing City's defense. Relying on the 2 walls of the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road, the layers of resistance that covered a distance of more than 50 kilometers, no matter how many Yuan-ko there were, by the time they reached the walls of the 4th Ring Road, they would definitely be exhausted. At most, they would only have 30% of their combat power left. This was also one of the conventions of Yanjing City's expansion. After the 6th Ring Road was built, the 4th Ring Road, which was originally classified as a battlefield, became the new gathering area for humans. Once the 7th Ring Road was built, the 5th Ring Road would also become a place for humans to live. Ever since the 6th Ring Road was built, there had been more than 10 major attacks. No matter how fierce the swordsmen's battles were, the ordinary humans living within the 4th Ring Road had never seen a shadow of Yuan-ko. The armored hover train could only reach the train station within the 6th Ring Road. After that, the armored hover train was not allowed to enter the area. Gohan had to transfer to the city's high-speed rail at the train station to enter the 4th Ring Road. Along the way, he saw countless factories. Densely packed roads connected the various factories in an orderly manner. Fully automatic hover trucks continuously transported the processed products from the factories to the next factory, or to the warehouses, or to the cities within the Fourth Ring Road. After sitting on the high-speed rail for about 20 minutes and passing through two thick city walls, Gohan felt as if he had instantly gone from a sparsely populated western town to a densely populated international metropolis. As far as the eye could see, it was densely packed with people. The businesses on the streets were incomparably prosperous, and there was a long queue in front of every restaurant. If it wasn't for the threat of Yuan Ko, this would definitely be the best era for humans. The high-speed rail could only reach the train station within the Fourth Ring Road. If one wanted to enter the Third Ring Road, Second Ring Road, or even the core area, they would have to transfer to the city rail. The Roaring Tiger Spirit was completely uninterested in the Fourth Ring Road. He called for Gohan to directly transfer to the city rail and enter the core area. However, Gohan refused. After all, it was Gohan's first time in Yanjing City. It was also his first time in a second headquarters city. Everything in Yanjing City was so curious. Gohan couldn't help but want to see the local customs of Yanjing City and taste the unique taste of the largest human city. The Roaring Tiger Spirit guessed Gohan's thoughts. In fact, every person who came to Yanjing City for the first time in Yuzhong City would have the same thoughts. There was nothing to be curious about. In the past, the Roaring Tiger Spirit had experienced the same thing. Thus, the Roaring Tiger Spirit and Gohan parted ways here. Ku-Rakin and Jin Yujia also seemed to have no interest in the Fourth Ring Road. They followed the Roaring Tiger Spirit into the core area. Meanwhile, Gohan took Lu Shihua and his precious sword maidens into the streets of the Fourth Ring Road. Although it was his first time in Yanjing City, the people of Yanjing City seemed to be especially enthusiastic about Gohan. Everyone who saw Gohan couldn't help but stare at Gohan's chest. Even in Yanjing City, which had a population of hundreds of millions, there weren't many people who could let a half-grown child hang on their chest. Especially when there were 3 scabbards hanging on Gohan's body. It looked like he was a sword-bearer. Chinpin, the cute little thing, didn't seem to notice the strange gazes of others. She excitedly looked at this brand-new family. From time to time, she waved her chubby little hand and directed Gohan to enter one shop after another. She curiously looked at the goods inside. Gohan noticed that these people of Yanjing City, even if they didn't live a good life, had patches on their clothes, and were thin and weak because of hunger. Their spirit was something that the people of Yuzhong City couldn't compare to. No matter how bad the situation of these people of Yanjing City was, whether it was walking or talking, they would always raise their heads high. Especially when they saw Gohan, they would raise their heads even higher and use a voice that they thought Gohan couldn't hear to mock him. Yuzhong dude. This situation wasn't unique. Gohan had been walking on the street for an hour, and he had heard at least 50 people call him Yuzhong dude. These people of Yanjing City seemed to have a natural sense of superiority. They felt that they were a head taller than the people of Yuzhong City, and that Yuzhong City people were born country bumpkins. Gohan didn't care about this kind of talk. His expression didn't change. However, Lu Shihua couldn't stand it. These days of living as a sword-bearer, Lu Shihua, an ordinary person, had gradually developed the temper of a sword-bearer. At the same time, as the master of the Yuzhong Sword Tower, even if she didn't want to take over the position, Yuzhong City had been tied to her personal dignity. An ordinary person dared to talk to her like this. Lu Shihua wanted to slap this snobbish guy and teach him a lesson. I don't care about the Lu Shihua from 40 days ago. Gohan held Lu Shihua's hand and calmed her down. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. The cautious Lu Shihua had disappeared. She was gradually becoming a real sword-bearer. As the saying goes, one's position determines one's position. Even if one was a beggar, as long as he sat on the dragon throne, he would be an emperor. Even if one was the Jade Emperor, as long as he cut off that thing, he would be a eunuch. Well, this logic was not wrong. Chapter 692. After a few laps, it was almost noon. In other words, it was time to eat. Qingpin, who had eaten plain rice for a day, climbed out of the nursery bag and rode on Gohan's shoulder. Two chubby little hands grabbed Gohan's ears and shouted in a childish voice, "Good Gohan, bad Gohan, stupid Gohan, Qingpin's stomach is hungry. If you don't give Qingpin food, Qingpin will eat you." "Okay, then let's go eat." Gohan grabbed Qingpin from his neck and held him in his arms. At the same time, he began to search for restaurants around, ready to find a place to fill the little devil's stomach. But no matter which restaurant it was, there was a long queue outside, and it would take at least 2 or 3 hours to enter the restaurant. If they had to wait in line, when they entered the restaurant, Qingpin's stomach would probably be flat from hunger. It seems that Yanjing City should really build a new 7th ring road, Gohan thought secretly in his heart. From the number of people in line at the restaurant, it could be seen that the entire 4th ring road of Yanjing City had completely entered a state of full load. Either the 5th ring road was immediately developed or the 7th ring road was immediately built. "Why don't we buy some bread to deal with it?" Gohan pointed to a bakery next to him and said. This was the only place in the entire Yanjing City where they could buy food without waiting in line. No, bread is worse than nutrient solution. Qingpin doesn't want to eat bread. Qingpin desperately made a fuss in Gohan's arms to express the dissatisfaction in his heart. But Gohan couldn't make no one dare to come out of the restaurant. Gohan was not an unreasonable tyrant, young Master Hey. "Hey, this master, you want to find a place to eat." Just when Gohan felt a little embarrassed, a man in his 30s came up with a smile on his face. "Can you help us find a place to eat?" Gohan asked suspiciously. "Of course, master. Who do you think I, Jia Sambiatsi, am? That's the top tour guide in Yanjing City." Jia Sambiatsi laughed even more happily. "Sir, I'm not bragging. Even if there are twice as many people eating now, Biaozi can still find a good private room for you. Are you really that powerful?" This time, it was Lu Shihua who spoke. "Sirs, I can tell that you are from Yuzhong City. You don't know that there is nothing impossible in our line of work. Hehe, as long as you are willing to pay, we can serve you." Jia Sambiatsi rubbed his fingers. Even if 1,000 years had passed, the meaning behind this action had never changed. "Alright, just say it. How much does it cost to help me find a private room?" Gohan asked nonchalantly. For the current Gohan, money was just a number that he had no concept of. "Sir, you're too honest. It all depended on what kind of restaurant you were looking for. Nowadays, most roadside stalls cost 2,000 renminbi per private room. If it was a bigger restaurant, then it would be at least this amount." Jia Sambiatsi stretched out his palm. "Are you kidding me? A referral fee costs 5,000 renminbi. Lu Shihua covered his mouth in surprise. In Yuzhong City, even if 5 people ordered a table of dishes, as long as they did not order expensive ingredients such as natural meat, it would be at most 3,000 to 4,000 RMB. In Yanjing City, the referral fee for a private room actually cost 5,000 renminbi. Were they being ripped off like monkeys? Hehe, master, the price depends on where you go. If you can enter the 3rd ring road, then the price will become 10,000 renminbi. If you can enter the 2nd ring road, then it will be another 10,000 renminbi. When Jia Sambiatsi spoke, he still had a smile on his face, but there was a hint of sarcasm in his tone, and there was a sense of impatience in it. It seemed that Jia Sambiatsi felt that Gohan did not have much to gain, so he was ready to leave. "Hey, then let me ask you, what is the price of a private room in the core area?" Lu Shihua found that Jia Sambiatsi only mentioned the 2nd ring road and did not mention the price of the core area, so he took it for granted and guessed, "Is the price of the core area going to be increased by another 10,000? How can it be? How can it be increased by another 10,000? The mocking expression on Jia Sambiatsi's face became more obvious. Replying to this young mistress, if you have the ability to enter the core area, you don't need to increase the price at all. There are many empty private rooms there. You can easily find one. You don't need us at all. Why is it like this? Shouldn't the flow of people in the core area be denser? Lu Shihua felt a little incredulous because the core area of Yuzhong City was like this. It was much more prosperous than the streets of the ordinary area. This is because… Hey, why am I telling you this? Jia Sambiatsi spat out a few words and patted his thigh in annoyance. Okay, masters, I don't have time to waste with you. You can go find it yourself. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. After that, Jia Sambiatsi was ready to leave. Wait! Guhan grabbed Jia Sambiatsi's collar. Jia Sambiatsi found that he seemed to be tied to a house, and could not take another step forward no matter what. Master, what do you want me to do? Jia Sambiatsi realized that the person he met was not an ordinary person. He said with a sad face, I don't want to do anything to you. Can you introduce us to a private room? Then let me ask you, where is the best natural meat here? Can you get us a private room? Guhan said calmly. The best place for natural meat. That is naturally Su Fuji. Jia Sambiatsi answered instinctively, but his face immediately turned pale. But master, Su Fuji's business is too popular, and the price is surprisingly high. I don't have the ability. I know, isn't this the problem of money? I will give you the price of a level 2 ring. You go find me a private room. Guhan gently touched Jia Sambiatsi's personal terminal. Jia Sambiatsi looked at his personal terminal, and it was full of stars. Okay, master, I understand. I will contact someone for you now. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will find you a private room. The Yanjing people were really interesting. They had to risk their lives just to find a private room. Su Fuji and Chanel were both the two biggest brands in the natural meat industry, but the business strategies between the two brands were different. Chanel took the large-scale chain system. In the 8 major Bay cities, except for Lungqing, they had their chain stores. But Su Fuji took the boutique system. Only in Yanjing City could there be Su Fuji restaurants, and there were only 4 of them, one in the core area of the 4th ring, the 3rd ring, and the 2nd ring. The price was naturally much more expensive than Chanel. Chanel's natural pork was 800 yuan per catty, but Su Fuji's was 1,800 yuan per catty. Even though the price was so expensive, the business of this Su Fuji was still very good. They were busy every day. All the private rooms were full, and they needed to reserve a seat half a year in advance. It could be seen that Jia Sambiatsi was indeed quite capable. With a few phone calls, he led Guhan to the Su Fuji restaurant in the 4th ring road, and then found a private room for Guhan on the 2nd floor. The decoration of this private room was also very luxurious. This very luxurious was not ordinary luxurious, but it was very luxurious compared to the other private rooms around him. The area was 3 times larger than the other private rooms. Perhaps ordinary people could not even enter the door of this private room. Jia Sambiatsi could arrange such a private room for Guhan. His ability was indeed not bad. Sir, we've agreed on the way here. If you don't spend more than 200,000 yuan in this private room, you won't be able to leave this place. My bones will also be broken by someone. Jia Sambiatsi wiped the sweat on his head and said. He had specifically told Guhan on the way here that this private room was an incredible private room. He had guaranteed to the lobby manager of Su Fuji that Guhan could spend more than 200,000 yuan before he brought Guhan here. Don't worry. Guhan's answer was very simple, so simple that Jia Sambiatsi felt very guilty. Sir, please order. A waiter in a red cheongsam came in and handed a delicate menu to Guhan. The dishes on the menu were very rich. There were braised pork with soy sauce, steamed pork with rice flour, braised pork with preserved vegetables, gualao pork, dompa pork, barbecued pork, boiled pork, spicy beef, charcoal roast beef, soy sauce beef, steamed lamb, fire roast whole cow, fire roast whole sheep, roast pig. There were 60 or 70 meat dishes. Just looking at the pictures, Qingpin's saliva was all forced out. Drops of saliva dripped on the menu. He looked at the waiter next to him with a burst of heartache and a burst of contempt. This. Qingpin's little hand clicked a dozen times on the menu, which meant that he had ordered a dozen dishes, and the price had exceeded 30,000 yuan. Although this was a large amount of consumption in Su Fuji, the waiter's face was still not at all happy. "Sir, our minimum consumption is..." Before the waiter's words were finished, he heard Gohan add a sentence. "According to the dishes that Qingpin ordered just now, give me 20 of each." 20. The waiter looked at Gohan with a dumbfounded face. "Is this person stupid? Give me 20 of each. That's more than 600,000 yuan. Even if you do have such a nouveau riche, there are only 5 of you, and 2 of you are kids. Can you eat so much? Sir, the rules of our Su Fuji are different from other restaurants. You have to pay first to eat here," the waiter said tentatively, and at the same time, he handed over the hotel's public terminal. In the next second, the public terminal flashed, and the waiter saw that more than 600,000 yuan had been transferred to the hotel's account. The waiter knew that he looked down on people this time. He immediately bowed with a smile and rushed out of the private room to urge Gohan to serve the dishes. "Sir, this is it. You're this." Jia Sanbiao gave a thumbs up. At this time, Jia Sanbiatsi finally breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing Gohan pay so quickly, Jia Sanbiatsi knew that the introduction fee of more than 30,000 yuan was a solid profit. "Sir, then I won't disturb your meal. I'll leave first." After that, Jia Sanbiatsi, who was satisfied, was ready to leave the private room. Wait. Before Jia Sanbiatsi could take a step, he heard Gohan say in an unquestionable voice, "Stay and have a meal with me. I still have some questions to ask you." "This, sir, there are some things that we can't say. Yanjing City's water is deep." Jia Sanbiatsi's voice was a little hesitant, as if he was unwilling to answer Gohan's question. But his buttocks betrayed him because his buttocks were about to sit on the chair. "One question for 10,000 yuan. Gohan's words were straightforward. "That's fine. Ask away." Jia Sanbiatsi's answer was equally straightforward. Chapter 693. The first question, I realize that you seem to recognize that I'm not from Yanjing City at first sight. How did you know? Gohan asked Jia Sanbiatsi. From your question, I can tell that you're not from Yanjing City. Jia Sanbiatsi said with a charming smile. It's actually very simple. Our Yanjing City hates yellow the most. We can't even be stained with a little yellow. Therefore, the clothes that we wear in Yanjing City never have a little yellow in them. Unlike you guys, your clothes are more or less yellow, so we can recognize that you're not from Yanjing City at a glance. Hearing Jia Sanbiatsi's words, Lu Shihua subconsciously looked at his clothes and found that there were some yellow stripes on his clothes. He then looked at Qingpin and Gu Yun. Qingpin was wearing a Pikachu costume today, and his whole body was yellow. Gu Yun was wearing green clothes, but there was a small yellow flower stained with blood on her clothes. Heavenly Sword was tied with a yellow belt, and there was a small yellow ring on the cuff of Gohan's clothes. All in all, their clothes were more or less yellow, and it was very obvious that they could recognize it at a glance. Why do you hate yellow so much? I read in the book that yellow was the color of nobility before the apocalypse. Why don't you like it? Lu Shihua asked curiously. Jia Sanbiatsi hesitated and refused to answer. She asked you the same as I asked you. What I said still counts. Gohan's words reassured Jia Sanbiatsi. He smiled flatteringly. No one knows the specific reason. It's a rule passed down from the time of Kanzu. I heard that when Yanjing City was just established, Lord Kanzu carried out a rectification movement. He taught us Yanjing City people to be noble and get rid of vulgar interest, to be a person with a healthy pursuit, to be a person who stays away from yellow things. Jia Sanbiatzi's speech was very rhythmic, which sounded like singing. This was also the characteristic of the people in Yanjing City. It was said that it had been passed down since before the Great Destruction. You see, the sword ancestor personally told us to stay away from yellow items. This is definitely not wrong, so we in Yanjing City hate yellow the most. Yellow is not allowed to appear anywhere. So that's how it is. Lu Shihua was fascinated. He really had to go out more. The outside world was too big, and there were too many new and interesting things. Gu Han shook his head noncommittally. As a person who had a deep understanding of history and culture, of course, he knew what the sword ancestor meant by the yellow color. When the sword master carried out the rectification movement, the great cultural destruction had not happened yet. At that time, it was impossible for human beings to not understand the true meaning of yellow, so Yanjing City did not reject yellow for this reason. This bullshit explanation of the sword ancestor's teachings must have been a smokescreen released by someone to cover up the truth at that time. Unexpectedly, this smokescreen had become a fact over time and had been passed down to this day. There's one more question. You just said that the private rooms in the core area are empty. Why is that? Gohan asked again. Hey, what's there to ask? Of course, it's because there aren't many people in the core area. Jia Sanbiatzi smiled mischievously. Sir, this is not a problem. I won't take your money. I don't have the face to take your money. That's impossible. The core area of Yuzhang City is always crowded with people. Every shop is full of people. It's just that it's a little deserted because of the big attack in recent days. At other times, it's not as deserted as your fourth ring road, Lu Shihua rushed to say. That's the biggest difference between our Yanjing City and Yuzhang City. Jia Sanbiatzi shook his head. I heard that the core area of Yuzhang City does not restrict ordinary people. Our Yanjing City is different. Only sword bearers or people with citizenship are allowed to enter the core area of our Yanjing City. Don't even think about it. If you're found out, you'll go to jail. Our Yuzhang City also restricts this. Only sword bearers and citizens can live in the core area. There's no difference. Lu Shihua was confused and didn't understand. You're wrong. You didn't understand what I meant. Jia Sanbiatzi knocked on the table with his fingers. Only sword bearers and citizens can live in the core area. Your Yuzhang City is indeed the same as our Yanjing City. But this is just for living. If it's just for fun, ordinary people can still freely enter and exit the core area. But in our Yanjing City, ordinary people are not even allowed to touch the edge of the core area. Otherwise, they'll be locked up for at least a year. How could this be? Isn't this blatant discrimination? They don't treat people as people. Their sword bearers are so awesome. Lu Shihua still had some consciousness of an ordinary person in her mind. After all, she hadn't become a real sword bearer yet. So after hearing this blatant discrimination, she was a little angry. My lord, you can't say that. Even if those sword bearers invite us in, I don't want to go to the core area. What's there to stay there? It's not as comfortable as the fourth ring. Jia Sanbiatzi sighed. In fact, not only the core area, even between the second ring, third ring and fourth ring, you can't enter and exit at will. If you don't apply for a third ring pass or a second ring pass, you'll have to go to jail if you're caught. Hearing Jia Sanbiatzi's words, Lu Shihua was stunned again. This can't be. It's a place where ordinary people live. Is there still a restriction on access? What's so strange about this? In a country before the apocalypse, didn't there also have Hong Kong and Macau passes and Taiwan passes? Jia Sanbiatzi curled his lip. You can also see that Yanjing City is surrounded by rings. The deeper you go, the safer it is. At least wait until all the people in the fourth ring are dead before it's the turn of the people in the third ring. The people in the outer ring try their best to squeeze into the inner ring to live. For example, if people in the fourth ring want to live in the third ring, according to the rules they have to buy a house in the third ring. Thus, the price of the third ring has been pushed up to more than 100 times that of the fourth ring, but it's still in short supply because no one is willing to sell their house. The high price of the third ring is not only a trap for the people in the fourth ring, but also for the people in the third ring. If a family in the third ring has a few extra kids, there are only two ways for them to go. They can either buy him a house and let him have a third ring account so that he can live in the third ring justifiably, or they can listen to the management of the council, and the council will allocate a house to this kid in the fourth ring. Everyone in the third ring wants their kid to live in the fourth ring. Everyone is trying their best to buy a house for the kid, but the price of the house has been pushed up by 100 times by the people in the fourth ring. Not many people in the third ring can afford it, so the conflict came. More than 200 years ago, when the fourth ring had just been designated as a residential area for a few decades, the people in the third ring and the fourth ring started fighting because of the housing price. Later, for some reason, the people in the second ring and the third ring also started fighting. At that time, facing the attack of the undead army led by Lich King Arthas, more than half of the sword-bearers in Yenjing City were transferred to fight in the Battle of New York. The remaining sword-bearers were also defending the city defense of Yenjing City with all their strength, so they didn't care about it. In the end, when the people of the Sword Council reacted, more than 2 million people in the third ring, fourth ring, and second ring had died, which was more than the number of people who died in the Yuan Ko attack. Later, after reflection, the Sword Council simply issued an order that from now on, the people in the second ring will be the people in the second ring, the people in the third ring will be the people in the fourth ring, and the people in the fourth ring will be the people in the fourth ring. From now on, only the people in the inner ring are allowed to stay in the outer ring, and the people in the outer ring are not allowed to enter the inner ring. A large number of troops were stationed between the city walls of each ring. Without a reasonable and legal reason to apply for a pass more than 10 days in advance, the people in the outer ring are not allowed to touch the land in the inner ring. Unless your family is lucky and gives birth to a sword-bearer, the people in the fourth ring will stay in the fourth ring for the rest of their lives. If you want to go to the fifth ring, it's not a problem. After finishing this long paragraph, Jia Sanbiatsi felt unbearably thirsty. He drank all the water in the cup in front of him, but still felt very thirsty. But this didn't solve the fundamental problem. The root of this contradiction is still there, and the solution of your Yenjing city is just adding a lock. I feel that sooner or later it will still erupt. Lu Shihua's political awareness was not bad, and he actually saw the fundamental problem. That can't be helped. The population is increasing, but there is only so much land. There will always be people living in the third ring, and there will always be people living in the fourth ring. In the future, the fifth ring will be the same. We can only endure until the day when Yuan Ko completely disappears. At that time, we can live wherever we want. That will be really free. Jia Sanbiatsi sighed and said, "That's true. I don't know if I can see the day when all the Yuan Ko die." Lu Shihua held his chin, looked at the chandelier in the room, and muttered to himself, "That day will come sooner or later." Guhan's expression was firm and helpless. But even if that day comes, it still can't be solved. Humans, they always go where there are more people. Before the Great Collapse, the population density of the old Beijing was not much lower than the fourth ring. Why didn't Yuan Ko exist at that time? My lord, you are very knowledgeable. You must be a cultured person who knows history. You even know what happened before the Great Collapse. Hearing Guhan's words, Jia Sanbiatsi stood up respectfully before Lu Shihua could react. My lord, I, Jia Sambiatsi, respect cultured people the most in my life. For today's business, I will give you a 2% discount. Chapter 694. Gohan finally asked Jia Sambiatsi some questions, and Jia Sambiatsi also answered them one by one. When Gohan's questions were almost answered, the first dish of meat was also served. This was the braised pork with soy sauce, which was Por Ching's favorite. The red braised pork with soy sauce was also glowing, which deeply attracted Por Ching's attention. This heartless little guy immediately climbed out of the nursery bag in front of Gohan's chest and stood directly on the dining table. He directly grabbed the braised pork with his hand and sent it into his mouth. Not to mention Gohan, even Lu Shihua had long been accustomed to Qingpin's appearance when eating meat. He slowly picked up a piece of meat and put it into his bowl, ignoring how embarrassed Qingpin was. Gohan and Lu Shihua could be so calm, but Jia Sambiatsi and the waitress in Chong Sam could not be so calm. Their eyeballs were almost popping out of their eye socket. The waitress in Chong Sam was also very knowledgeable. She had seen all kinds of diners in the world, but it was the first time she had seen a cute little guy like Qingpin who could eat so much. Master, is it okay for the little princess to eat like this? She has already eaten 3 plates. You should persuade her. Jia Sambiatsi's eyes had not yet retracted. Qingpin had already eaten the 3 plates of braised pork in front of him. This was already the amount of an adult. If a normal child ate so much, he would have already been in the hospital. It's okay. Don't worry about her. It's just the beginning. Hearing Gohan's words, Jia Sambiatsi felt that he could not stay here anymore. Otherwise, it would not take long for his worldview to collapse. Master, you are fine. I will leave first. Jia Sambiatsi got up and was ready to leave. Don't rush to leave. Eat before you leave. Gohan urged him to stay. Master, the rule of our business is that we must not eat the guests' food. Please, take your time. I'm leaving now. Jia Sambiatsi did not dare to stay here any longer. He made a bow and trotted to the door. Gohan did not ask him to stay. However, Jia Sanbiao had only taken a few steps when he slowly retreated back. As he retreated, he bowed towards the door and said, Uncle Bear, may you be blessed like gold. Uncle Bear. Yo, Jia Sambiatsi, you still know that you want me, Lord Bear, to be blessed. Although his name was Uncle Bear, the person who spoke did not have the body of a bear. Instead, he was exceptionally thin and looked no different from the old people who did morning exercises in the park. It could be seen that Jia Sambiatsi was very afraid of this bear. In just a dozen seconds, his face was covered with sweat, and his neckline was wet. He was in a state of extreme tension. Well, I was wondering who dared to touch the private room I booked. Turned out to be you, Jia Sanbiao. Lord Bear sneered, Jia Sanbiao, I won't make things difficult for you. Go out and find someone to break his legs. I won't argue with you about today's matter. Beat. Break. Jia Sanbiao was about to cry, Lord, please don't let me beat others. Can I break my own legs? Don't. Why would I want your legs? I want someone else's legs. Lord Bear gently patted Jia Sanbiao's face. I'll give you 10 minutes. If you can't break someone's legs in 10 minutes, I'll help you kill someone. Ouch. What kind of sin did I commit today? Jia Sanbiao slapped himself hard, and his 2 thick legs began to run for his life, madly running downstairs. Master, why don't I understand? Hearing the conversation between Lord Bear and Jia Sanbiao, Lu Shihua felt confused. Why does this person want Jia Sanbiao to break someone's legs? If he wants to take revenge on Jia Sanbiao, wouldn't it be better to break his legs? Gohan pondered for a moment. Breaking someone's legs is much worse than breaking your own legs. Yo. This gentleman from Yuzhong City is a sensible person. How many times have you come to our Yanjing city? I've never seen you before. Lord Bear's 5 or 6 subordinates sat opposite Gahan. The table in this private room was big enough to accommodate more than 30 people eating at the same time. Including Lord Bear's 4 or 5 people, it was a bit loose. This is my first time here. Why, did I invite you to sit down? Stand up. Gahan looked at Lord Bear disdainfully, as if in Gahan's eyes, this Lord Bear was like a pile of shit. How dare you talk to our Lord Bear like this, you're courting death. One of Lord Bear's subordinates pointed at Gahan's nose and scolded. Hey, who allowed you to talk? Have a good chat with this friend. Lord Bear waved his hand, and his subordinate shut up. Young man, you're young, but you talk big. You have some guts. Well, seeing that you're not from Yanjing City, I won't argue with you about this. As he spoke, Elder Bear nodded at the table with a smile on his face. I, Elder Bear, booked this private room. Not to mention the entire Yanjing City, everyone in the 4th Ring Road knows about this. You took my table. What do you think I should do? Hee. Then seeing that it's your first day knowing me, I won't argue with you about what happened today. You can get lost now, don't disturb my meal. Gahan waved his hand, motioning for Lord Bear to get lost. He lowered his head and ate the delicious red braised pork bite by bite. Su Fuji's braised pork was indeed worthy of being a premium brand. The taste was much better than Chanel's. It was indeed a rare delicacy. F***CK. One of Lord Bear's subordinates couldn't take it anymore. He picked up his hand and was about to do something, but was stopped by Lord Bear again. Young man, I know you're a swordsman, so it's understandable that you're a little arrogant. Lord Bear's tone sounded like he was lecturing his juniors, but this is not your Yuzhong City, the kind of place where a swordsman can cover the sky with one hand. This is Yanjing City, and things in Yanjing City are much more complicated than Yuzhong City. Even if you're a swordsman, I have a way to let you leave here lying down. After saying this, Lord Bear suddenly gestured to his subordinates. One of his subordinates immediately opened the curtains of the window and pointed his personal terminal at the world outside the window. Another subordinate took out his personal terminal and projected an image on the table. This image was the scene outside the window. In the image, Jia Sanbiatsi staggered to the outside of Su Fuji, looking at the pedestrians on the street with a gloomy and hesitant expression. When a thin child passed by, Jia Sanbiatsi found his target. He lifted his foot and kicked the little kid to the ground. Then he picked up a big iron bar and kept hitting the unlucky child's thigh bone. In less than 10 seconds, the child's thigh became completely distorted. This was a sign that the other person's leg bone had been broken. Even though such a vicious fight had taken place on the interface, the people coming and going didn't seem to be affected. They walked by indifferently as if they hadn't seen anything. Stop! Seeing this scene, Lucifer finally couldn't bear the anger in her heart. She was about to rush downstairs to stop Jia Sanbiatsi's crazy behavior when a dozen police robots with 4 wheels and 2 police pistols appeared. As soon as this police robot appeared, Jia Sanbiatsi immediately stopped his beating. He raised his hands with a sad face and squatted on the ground, waiting for the police robot to deal with it. It was hard to imagine that this person with a sad face was the one who beat others crazily for no reason just now. I say all along. Breaking someone's leg for no reason, what punishment will he receive in Yanjing City? Lord Bear suddenly asked one of his men next to him. Lord, at least 8 years, up to 20 years. The specific number will be decided by the judge. The man named Along replied. Oh, if that's the case, help me pass a message to Judge Sunday. Tell him that this Jia Sanbiatsi is not easy. He doesn't need to be locked up for 20 years. He just needs to be locked up for 19 years and 9 months. He should be magnanimous. Lord Bear said with a, I'm a good person expression. What was the difference between 19 years and 9 months and 20 years? This Lord Bear was purely here to disgust Gahan. Now you understand why this Jia Sanbiatsi would rather break his own leg. Gu Han touched Lucifer's head, who was still in a daze. The child had yet to recover from the scene. How can there be such a ridiculous thing in the world? Is this really the center of the human world, Yanjing City? Lucifer's eyes were wide open, and he said to himself mechanically, "Of course this is the center of the human world." Lord Bear smiled and looked at Lucifer lecherously. "Little girl, the most perfect law in our Yanjing City is the law. This law is good. We don't have to do a lot of things. The law will do it for us. Don't you think this law is good?" Hearing Lord Bear's arrogant remarks, Lucifer was completely speechless. Yanjing City is indeed the center of the human world. Its law is indeed very perfect. It's a pity that this perfect law has fallen into the hands of some people and has become a tool that can be used. Guhan patted Lucifer's head again and said to the triumphant Lord Bear, "It seems that no matter how advanced the technology is, no matter how perfect the monitoring of this human terminal is, there will always be loopholes for animals like you to exploit." "Okay, whatever you say. So what if I am an animal?" Lord Bear stared at Guhan's eyes. "Since you are the sword wielder, then Lord Bear will save you some face. Let's have a civil battle." "Tell me, how do you want to have a civil battle?" "Simple. Do you see Lord Bear's 6 subordinates?" Lord Bear stared at the empty plates in front of Guhan. "You can pick anyone. As long as they can defeat Lord Bear's subordinates, Lord Bear will let them go. You can pay the bill and scram. If you can't defeat them, then that's easy. Lord Bear will let you stay in Shanghai Pass for 2 years. If you can come back alive, then consider yourself lucky. How about it?" Lord Bear's face finally revealed a vicious expression. Chapter 695. Shanghai Pass was a name that sounded extremely terrifying to the sword-bearers. This was because there was a 40% chance that one would die at the Shanghai Pass frontline. This wasn't a joke. The Shanghai Pass frontline was a huge meat grinder. Every year, more than 1,000 sword-bearers would die there. This was because these sword-bearers had to face 12 living desolate grade Yuan Ko. The 12 Zhu Wu of the primordial era, an existence that only existed in legends before the apocalypse, had forcefully descended into this world 200 years ago. Furthermore, it wasn't just one, but all 12 of them. However, they were different from the other Yuan Ko. The other Yuan Ko at least had some awareness of friend and foe. They knew that their main targets were humans. However, these 12 Zhu Wu seemed to have gone completely mad. All living creatures they saw were their targets to kill. Therefore, the first to suffer wasn't humans but the Hero Alliance, whose base was in the northeast of China. This was the base of a small Yuan Ko faction formed by over 100 meteor-grade Yuan Ko. Under the attack of the 12 Zhu Wu, a total of 30 heroes returned to the dimensional vortex. The remaining heroes escaped quickly, fleeing to the Martyr's Palace to seek protection. What followed was the most tragic period for Yuan Ko. It was said that a total of 4 million Yuan Ko died under the 12 Zhu Wu's indiscriminate attack. If it wasn't for the 12 Zhu Wu's movements gradually approaching Beijing City would definitely be more than happy to see these 12 fellows clean up Earth's trash. Unfortunately, Beijing City was on the path that the 12 Zhu Wu had to pass through. This was a battle that humans couldn't avoid. In order to defeat the 12 Zhu Wu, humans had made a lot of preparations. They had even taken the initiative to send Jiandi to negotiate with the other Yuan Ko factions, requesting that Yuan Ko send desolate-grade Yuan Ko to help. In the beginning, Yuan Ko was naturally unwilling. However, humans threatened that if Yuan Ko wasn't willing, they would evacuate all the citizens of Beijing City and allow the 12 Zhu Wu to destroy the city. Then, they would collectively flee to Yuzhong City. This was because, according to calculations, the 12 Zhu Wu's next target was the Eastern Celestial Court. Although humans and Yuan Ko were mortal enemies, humans and Yuan Ko had no choice but to work together to deal with a threat like the 12 Zhu Wu. It was said that Yuan Ko had sent out 4 desolate-grade Yuan Ko, while humans themselves had sent out 3 Jiandi. At the same time, humans and Yuan Ko's most elite forces were deployed to set up defenses at Shanhai Pass, forming the legendary Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. After an earth-shattering battle, humans and Yuan Ko's elites suffered heavy casualties. Fortunately, the high-end forces, Jiandi and Desolate-grade Yuan Ko, did not suffer any losses. However, it was precisely because the high-end forces cherished their lives that the 12 Zhu Wu did not die. They were only trapped by the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. They were trapped until now, 200 years later. Humans and Yuan Ko used the entire northeast of China as the formation's base. They used 365 large Zhou Tian star banners as the base and 14,800 small Zhou Tian star banners as the trunk to trap the 12 Zhu Wu. The 365 large Zhou Tian star banners were managed by 365 famous sword bearers, while the 14800 small Zhou Tian star banners were managed by ancient sword bearers. The entire human world had to send so many sword-bearers to maintain the existence of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. Sometimes, holding the star banners was not enough. Each sword-bearer was responsible for the stability of an area. Any Wu people who appeared in that area had to be killed immediately. If you did not kill them, they would kill you. Every year, more than 1,000 sword-bearers would die in this kind of battle, which was equivalent to 1/15 of the total number of practitioners in the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. Once the number of deaths in the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation exceeded 1/10, a fatal flaw would appear in the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation, and the 12 Zhu Wu would break out of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. At that time, humans did not have the basic conditions to negotiate with Yuan Ko like they did in the past. This was because almost all the Yuan Ko forces had moved their lairs to the void. The 12 Zhu Wu were not interested in going to the void to find the Yuan Ko. They could not wait for the 12 Zhu Wu to break out of the formation and completely destroy humanity. Therefore, to maintain the existence of the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation, the Sword Committee would allocate quotas according to the number of sword-bearers in the 8 base cities every year. Each base city had to send their own sword-bearers to Shanhai Pass to maintain the existence of the flesh and blood mill. As the most powerful base city, Yanjing was naturally allocated the most quotas. After all, Shanhai Pass was the closest to Yanjing. Almost half of the quotas were from Yanjing. Every sword-bearer who was allocated to Shanhai Pass had to stay in Shanhai Pass for 3 years. After 3 years, a new sword-bearer would appear. According to the statistics of the Sword Committee, only about 60% of the sword-bearers could survive the 3 years. In other words, the death rate of the sword-bearers was as high as 40%. No matter how selfless the sword-bearers were, they would instinctively feel fearful when facing the front line of Shanhai Pass. Each of them would rack their brains and do everything possible to avoid being allocated to the front line of Shanhai Pass. Therefore, the Shanhai Pass Management Committee became the behemoth that these sword-bearers had to face. As the name suggested, the Shanhai Pass Management Committee was the organization responsible for the allocation of the front line of Shanhai Pass. This organization was formed by the spirit sword-bearers in the 8 base cities. Every month, they had to take 1 or 2 days out for a meeting to discuss and argue over the quotas that their city had allocated, as well as to decide which sword-bearers should be sent to the front line of Shanhai Pass. Therefore, it could be said that the life and death of the majority of the sword-bearers were in the hands of the Shanhai Pass Management Committee. Big Bear used the front line of Shanhai Pass to threaten the sword-bearers, which could indeed make the sword-bearers feel fearful. So, you have connections in the Shanhai Pass Management Committee? Gohan asked curiously. Listen up, the chairman of the Shanhai Pass Management Committee is our Big Bear's sworn brother. They grew up wearing the same underwear and have a good relationship. As long as our Big Bear says the word, he can immediately send you to the front line of Shanhai Pass. Big Bear's underlings shouted aggressively. I don't think so. I'm the sword-bearer of Yuzhong City. Your big bear can at most threaten the sword-bearers of Yanjing City. How can I be threatened? Gohan asked with a smile, looking as if he didn't care about Big Bear's threat at all. You don't understand. Big Bear's underling continued to play the role of a commentator. It's very easy for our Big Bear to send you to the front line. As long as the chairman speaks to the spirit sword-level sword-bearers of Yuzhong City and agrees to exchange 3 quotas from Yanjing City for 1 quota from Yuzhong City, your committee will definitely push you up without hesitation. It's not like this hasn't happened before. There have already been 3 or 4 ungrateful sword-bearers from other cities who were sent to the front line of Shanhai Pass by Big Bear. We don't need one more. The meaning of Big Bear's underling was very simple. When it came to the allocation of manpower, Yanjing City was willing to help Yuzhong City allocate 3 more quotas in exchange for a compromise from Yuzhong City. They would appoint a certain sword-bearer from Yuzhong City to the front line of Shanhai Pass. For the sake of their own base cities, almost all the committee members would agree to this exchange. There was no doubt about it. I see. It's indeed a good plan. You're indeed a beast. Gohan's face still looked as if he didn't care. Well, since you've finished threatening me, you can leave now. Don't disturb my meal. What? You don't even dare to fight? Big Bear's anger finally showed on his face. Just as he was about to threaten something, the door of the private room was suddenly opened. Then, waiters in Cheongsam came into the private room with 5 or 6 plates of meat dishes, placing hundreds of dishes on the table. You ordered all these? Big Bear couldn't help but be surprised when he saw so many dishes, but he quickly regained his composure. Humph, today Big Bear must compete with you. The 6 of you go up and eat as much as you want. If you can't even compete with others in terms of eating, then you'll be like that idiot Jia Sanbiatsi just now. If you want to find someone to break his leg, understand? Yes. The 6 subordinates responded in unison. Then, their faces revealed drooling expressions at the same time. They actually encountered such a good opportunity to eat Su Fuji's natural pork. In fact, even without Big Bear's order, they would have eaten as much as they wanted. As the saying goes, as long as they didn't die, they would continue to eat. Therefore, even without Gohan's consent, the 6 subordinates shamelessly sat at the dining table. They each picked up a plate of braised pork and were about to stuff it into their mouth. You're not allowed to eat Qingpin's meat. Gohan didn't say he would let you eat it. Qingpin stuffed 2 pieces of braised pork into his mouth, then picked up his greasy and chubby little hand. He rushed in front of one of his subordinates like lightning and stuck his little hand directly into his eyes. The subordinate screamed, covered his eyes, and fell under the table. Third bro. Seeing this sudden situation, the other 5 subordinates were stunned. Then, they rushed forward in a flurry, wanting to take revenge for third bro. Idiot! Idiot! Eater thief! Facing the siege of 5 people, Qingpin nimbly jumped on the table. Every time he jumped, he would jump in front of one person. Then, he would do the same to the first person and poke the other person's eyes until they bled. However, what made people click their tongues in amazement was that when the poor man jumped on the table, he didn't even touch a single plate or knock over a plate of pork. After all, these things would eventually enter Qingpin's stomach. She was reluctant to give up these delicious foods. After a short while, all 5 of his subordinates were lying on the ground with their hands covering their eyes. They were rolling around and wailing in pain. Judging from the small amount of blood on their bodies, unless they regrown their limbs, these 5 or 6 people would definitely be blinded. Good, good, good. Young people are really aggressive. I dug a pit for you, and you jumped in. Chapter 696. Lao San, Lord Bear wants to ask you, in broad daylight, a sword mistress beat up ordinary people and blinded them. What crime is that? How many years are you going to be sentenced to? Even though all 6 of his underlings were lying on the ground, Lord Bear's expression did not change as he calmly asked his underling. Replying to Lord Bear, either in prison for 20 years or in Beacon Fortress for 10 years or 3 years at the front line of Shanghai Pass. This subordinate, who was known as Old Third, was rolling on the ground in pain. When he answered, he was out of breath, intermittently, and in extreme pain. However, he still managed to answer Big Bear's question. Young man, don't be too impulsive. Now you know what it means to be impulsive. Lord Bear smiled proudly. All right. Eat as much as you can before the disciplinary committee comes. Once you're in there, you won't be able to eat these good things anymore. I'm from Yuzhong City. Your Yanjing City disciplinary committee can't control me. Gohan replied calmly. Sure enough, newbies are the most annoying. I always have to explain so many things to you. Lord Bear knocked on the table again and said fiercely, Listen carefully. This is Yanjing City, not your Yuzhong City. No matter how arrogant your Yuzhong City sword bearers are, people in Yanjing City have to abide by Yanjing City's laws and accept the jurisdiction of our Yanjing City Disciplinary Committee. Even if your old man Lu Lei comes, he won't be able to take you away from Yanjing City Disciplinary Committee. I don't want to talk nonsense with you anymore. Gohan rubbed his forehead in pain. Lao San, I want to ask you, if a sword bearer kills an ordinary person, what will be the punishment? This, Lao San hesitated for a moment before replying, should be in Shanghai Pass for 6 years. Lord Bear's underling answered Gohan's question in a muddle-headed manner. He didn't notice anything wrong. But Lord Bear, this old fox, felt a chill run down his spine. He suddenly remembered something his father once told him. The most dangerous people in this world are the elderly and children. One is about to die, the other is not afraid of death. Good, you're amazing. Let's go. Big Bear made a prompt decision. He felt that he couldn't continue acting tough. He didn't even care about his 6 subordinates who were wailing on the ground. He immediately stood up and hurriedly left the private room. Unfortunately, he was still one step too late. An invisible sword light flashed, and Big Bear, who was in the middle of running, suddenly stopped. His body stopped moving, but his head continued to move forward due to inertia. Finally, it fell 7 or 8 meters away from his body. The entire private room was completely silent at this moment. After 3 or 4 seconds of silence, the waiter in Cheongsam, who had been waiting in the private room, suddenly let out a shocking scream. The tray in his hand fell to the ground, and he raised his hands and frantically ran out of the private room. Master, why did you kill again? Looking at the headless corpse on the ground, Lu Shihua smiled bitterly. Master, you just finished judging a case of beheading. Can't you stop for a while? In the end, on your first day in Beijing, you beheaded another person. Aren't you looking for trouble for yourself? It's no big deal. If I don't kill this kind of person, who knows how many more pitiful sword-bearers will die in the future? Gohan curled his lips. Right, let me correct you. The one who killed was you, not me. Master, although I'm your disciple, you can't just push the blame to me like this. Lu Shihua heard Gohan say this, and his whole body was in a mess. Gohan didn't care about Lu Shihua's confusion. Instead, he said to his 3 sword maidens, It's finally quiet now. You guys eat while it's hot. Other than Lu Shihua, who had no appetite at all, Gohan's sword maidens all had good appetite. They ate a little more than usual. After all, they had suffered for a few days on the armored hover train. About 5 or 6 minutes later, another group of people rushed into the private room in a panic. The ones in the lead were the 3 sword-bearers who had always followed his sword maidens. A lightning bolt symbol was drawn on their foreheads. This represented their identity as members of the discipline committee. Who was the one who killed him? Stand out. The leading member of the discipline committee for discipline inspection scolded. Wait, my sword maidens haven't filled their stomachs yet. An extremely calm voice answered him. In a common room with 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, Song Yifei, who hadn't seen her in a long time, was humming a song that only she could understand. She was fiddling with a cold dish in her hand. Beside the cold dish, there were more than 10 plates filled with all kinds of delicious food. Ding dong! A crisp doorbell rang. Song Yifei didn't go to open the door. Instead, she pressed a button on her personal terminal. The door that was more than 10 meters away automatically opened. Then, a figure rushed in. Ling, what's the rush? My food isn't ready yet. Song Yifei didn't look at Liunian Ling. She knew immediately that the person who entered her room was Liunian Ling. She was her only friend in the whole of Yanjing City. Other than Liunian Ling, no one else would come looking for her. Yifei, why did you prepare so many dishes? Liunian Ling's attention was attracted by the dishes on the table. You call this a lot? I still have more than 10 dishes in the kitchen. You don't know, Qinpin might have eaten all of them. Even if I prepared 100 dishes, it wouldn't be enough for her. Song Yifei smiled happily at the mention of Qinpin. She hadn't smiled like this for a long time. Ever since fleeting time wooden fish forcefully brought her back to Yanjing City with the giant void hand, Song Yifei hadn't had any effect on her for a long time. Especially when she found out that Gohan was missing, she became extremely depressed and annoyed. Every other day, she would want to leave Yanjing City and return to Yuzhong City. However, the problem was that the armored levitating train had not been opened yet. If Song Yifei wanted to return to Yuzhong City, she would have to drive the levitating airship alone. One could imagine how dangerous it would be. If not for Liunian Ling's special instructions to send people to protect Song Yifei in secret and stop her at the city gates, Song Yifei might still be alive. In the end, Liunian Ling even stopped doing her own things and stayed at Song Yifei's temporary residence to accompany her. She made sure that Song Yifei would not do anything stupid. 10 days later, Song Yifei was pleasantly surprised to hear that Gohan had reappeared. Song Yifei finally smiled through her tears and walked out of her despair. When Song Yifei found out that Gohan had followed the team from Yuzhong University to Yanjing City, she was so happy that she almost jumped for joy. She would check on the armored levitating train every hour to confirm Gohan's location. Once she was certain that Gohan would arrive in Yanjing City, she immediately prepared a table of delicacies for Gohan and Qinpin. That's true. No amount of food will be enough for a cute girl like Qinpin. But there's no need for too many tricks to deal with a cute girl like Qinpin. You just have to prepare 20 plates of red braised pork, 20 plates of dongpa pork, and 20 plates of chili stir-fried pork. That'll be enough. A loving smile appeared on his face when he thought of Qinpin's adorable face. Liunian Ling regretted not choosing Qinpin as her sword mistress at the sword burial grounds in Yuzhong City. Instead, she ended up with an unreliable girl like Yi Xian. Even now, Liunian Ling did not dare to release Yi Xian. God knows if Yi Xian would go on a killing spree in Yanjing City. Wait a minute. What the hell am I thinking? How did I forget my original goal? Liunian Ling slapped Song Yifei's butt. All right, Madame Yifei. That bastard Gohan will not be able to taste your food today. What? Song Yifei's hand that was peeling the century egg trembled. How is that possible? I just spoke to Gohan this morning. He said that he'll arrive in Yanjing City before noon. Did something happen to him during the last part of his journey? No, he's already in Yanjing City. Liunian Ling yanked the apron off Song Yifei's body and slapped the century egg out of his hand. I'm telling you, he's in the core zone. He's less than a kilometer away from you. Come with me, we have to meet him immediately. Why are we leaving? It's as if I want to see him. Song Yifei blushed. Besides, I've already given him my address. He promised to look for me. He can't look for you now. He can't even protect himself. Liunian Ling had a troubled look on her face. He's always been a troublemaker. He did something like this as soon as he arrived in Yanjing City. I can't even clean up his mess in time. What's happening? What's going on? Hurry up and tell me. Song Yifei came to a sudden realization, and grabbed Fleeting Ling's hand with a worried look on his face. Alright, don't ask me anymore. I can't explain it to you in a few words. Just come with me. With that, he pulled Song Yifei out of the door. Did you really do it? In the discipline committee's interrogation room, Gu Han and Lu Shihua sat together on a chair. Opposite them was a discipline committee member whose face was filled with disbelief. According to the rules of the Commission for Discipline Inspection, the Commission for Discipline Inspection did not have the authority to judge sword ladies, so in the interrogation room, all of Gu Han's ship ladies turned back into their sword forms, sheathed in Gu Han's scabbards. But the person that the discipline committee was interrogating was not Gu Han, but Lu Shihua, who was fiddling with his fingers beside Gu Han. During the interrogation, Lu Shihua faintly admitted, "It's me, I killed that elder bear." Humph. The discipline committee member slammed the table. Only an idiot would believe that Lu Shihua was the murderer. Chapter 697. Did you really kill him? The member of the Discipline Inspection Committee slammed the table with all his might. Little girl, it's a good thing to respect your teacher, but don't put all the blame on yourself. There are some things you can't handle. Do you know what punishment you'll receive for taking the blame? If you're a sword wielder, you'll have to go to the Shanghai Pass front line and stay there for 6 years. If you're a normal person, you'll have to pay with your life. The disciplinary committee member had already checked beforehand. Lu Shihua was indeed a normal person. He didn't have any characteristics of a sword wielder. If Lu Shihua killed someone, then Lu Shihua would have to pay with his life. Therefore, the disciplinary committee member was a good person. He didn't want Lu Shihua to take the blame for a sword wielder and lose his life for nothing. At the same time, the disciplinary committee member looked down on Gu Han even more. A sword wielder actually used his normal disciple to take the blame for him. Was this something a noble sword wielder should do? Unfortunately, the disciplinary committee member didn't have any evidence to prove that the murderer was Gu Han. When he requested to access the cloud data stored in these people's terminals, the response he got was that these people's terminals had been destroyed before the murder. There was no evidence at all. The disciplinary committee member then started to check the terminals of Boss Bear and the others. He was shocked to find that all of their terminals had been destroyed. They had been sliced into 8 pieces by some kind of sharp weapon, and all the information inside had been destroyed. As for the testimony of the blind Boss Bear's subordinates, they couldn't be trusted. They were all blind, so how could they see who killed Boss Bear? Naturally, the evidence couldn't be used. Therefore, the disciplinary committee member could only use the most helpless interrogation method to try and force Lu Shihua to confess who the real murderer was. Don't say any more. I killed him, Lu Shihua said weakly. Do you think the disciplinary committee members are all idiots? The disciplinary committee member slapped the table again. Then, his terminal projected many pictures. Some of the pictures were of Boss Bear's corpse, and some were pictures of the broken terminals. Look at these wounds. Look at these sword wounds. Is this something an ordinary person can do? This can only be done by a highly skilled swordswoman. The judge pointed his finger at Gu Han's nose. Is it your swordswoman who did this? You better tell me the truth. Don't try to use your disciple as a scapegoat. You can't fool me. Shihua, show him what you've got. Gu Han ignored the judge's question and turned to Shihua. Yes, master. Lu Shihua took out an ordinary sword from his dimensional pocket. Before the judge could react, the sword slashed right under his nose. An icy chill caused the hair on the tip of the judge's nose to stand on end. What do you mean? How dare you attack the Commission for Discipline Inspection? The Morals and Discipline Committee member's voice inevitably trembled. In that instant just now, he felt as if the god of death had brushed past his shoulder. Let him see for himself, Gu Han said to Lu Shihua. So, Lu Shihua brought the tip of his sword to the judge's eyes. The judge looked down and was shocked to find that there were a few black dots on the tip of the sword. "What is this?" the judge asked in confusion. "This is the blackhead on your nose. If you don't believe me, you can touch it with your hand and see if it's still there," Lu Shihua said with a straight face. The judge immediately touched his nose. As expected, his originally rough nose had become very smooth. The black dots that were a little prickly were all gone. "This woman can use her sword to remove the blackheads on my nose without causing any damage to my nose. This person's swordsmanship is too terrifying. Is she really an ordinary person? She can't be a swordswoman, right?" the judge muttered to himself. He just realized that Lu Shihua's sword was to prove that she had the ability to use the sword that killed Big Bear, even if she was just an ordinary person. This sword not only shocked the judge, but it also shocked Gohan, who was watching from the side. Gohan's original intention was for Lu Shihua to shave off some of the hair on the guy's nose. He didn't expect Lu Shihua to shave off the guy's blackhead. Although the difference between the two wasn't like the difference between heaven and earth, it was like the difference between a car and a bicycle. Lu Shihua's swordsmanship was improving too quickly. Originally, Gohan estimated that Lu Shihua would need at least 2 years to catch up to his swordsmanship. Now, it seemed like a year and a half would be enough. "Well, now you can prove that I was the one who killed him." Lu Shihua put his sword back into the scabbard, and his voice was still weak. "You're so stubborn." The judge was completely helpless. At the same time, he realized that Lu Shihua and the swordsman's background was not ordinary. They didn't have to worry about what would happen after they killed someone. "All right, if there's no problem, sign this confession and wait for the court's trial." The judge handed the confession that he had just written to Lu Shihua. Lu Shihua took the confession and looked at it carefully. There were no mistakes. Just as she was about to sign her name, Gohan held her hand. "We've answered all our questions. Can we go now?" Gohan said to the judge. "That's right. Let's go." "Leave?" The judge snorted coldly. "You can leave, but your apprentice can't. She's now our suspect. She'll have to go through the court's trial to decide her fate. You don't have the right to judge her." With a wave of Gohan's finger, the confession in front of Lu Shihua was shredded into fingernail-sized pieces of paper. The judge couldn't believe his eyes. Was this really something a human could do? Lu Shihua's sword had already amazed the judge, but it was still within the realm of human imagination. But Gohan's sword energy felt like it was at the level of an immortal. No wonder this swordsman is her master. His swordsmanship is indeed qualified to be her master. Wait, a swordsman that can use sword energy, could it be that this swordsman is a spirit sword level swordsman? After entering the interrogation room, the discipline committee only registered Lu Shihua's identity. Gohan refused to register his own identity and sword level, so the judge still hadn't figured out what sword level Gohan was. It wasn't until he saw this that the judge began to suspect that Gohan was a spirit sword level swordsman. A spirit sword level swordsman from Yuzhong City came to Yanjing City to kill someone? This matter would probably give the higher-ups of Yanjing City a headache. Who knew how to solve this matter? It might even become a big dispute between Yuzhong City and Yanjing City. At this time, the judge began to feel lucky that Lu Shihua took the initiative to take the blame. If the murderer was an ordinary person, then it would be much easier, and the way to deal with it would be much more flexible. But this swordsman just said that he didn't have the right to judge his disciple? What was going on? How could he not have the right to judge an ordinary person? Just when the judge was about to ask for clarification, the interrogation room's door was suddenly violently pushed open. Under the lead of a bald old man, 2 graceful and beautiful women walked in. "Mr. Wang, I haven't finished the interrogation yet. Do you want to wait a little longer?" the judge said to the bald old man. "Okay, there's nothing to judge. Let them go," Mr. Wang said hurriedly, as if he couldn't wait to chase these people away. But Mr. Wang, they are all murder suspects. I can't just leave like this. The judge felt very strange. Although the murderer hadn't been confirmed, one of these two people must be the murderer. There was no doubt about this. How could he let them go before he figured out the matter? Didn't you hear what I said? Let them go. You don't have to worry about this matter anymore, Mr. Wang said forcefully. Then, the judge watched as Gohan and Lu Shihua followed the two women out of the interrogation room. Finally, he sat down on the chair dispiritedly. After a few minutes, Mr. Wang walked into the interrogation room again. When he saw the judge sitting there dejectedly, he could only smile bitterly, pat him on the shoulder, and then sit next to him. Mr. Wang, what the hell is going on? The judge raised his head and asked in confusion. Can't you see it? We can't afford to provoke the background of these two people. I can only ask them to leave here quickly, or else we'll both be trapped. Mr. Wang replied in confusion. Background. Background. If we really want to talk about background, there's no one in the world who has a stronger background than us. The more the judge thought about it, the angrier he got. He pouted and said, We are the Discipline Inspection Commission, which is directly under the management of the Yanjing City Sword Committee. His Majesty Hao Tian is our background. Who do we have to be afraid of? I know that even without you saying it, but there are some people in this world who have a stronger background than our Majesty Hao Tian, Mr. Wang said, as if he was pointing out something. But you don't have to worry about the procedure. The identity of the girl who killed the murderer isn't simple. Even if we don't care about her background and follow the procedure, the two of us can't interrogate her. Only the Sword Committee has the right to judge her. Only the Sword Committee has the right to judge her. The judge was confused. Is this woman the chairman of the Sword Committee or the master of the sword garret? Chapter 698. You really know how to make trouble for me. Chopping off someone's head on your first day in Yanjing. Do you think this is your Yuzhang city? Liuyan Ling rolled her eyes at Gohan. I've even thought of a nickname for you. From now on, I'll call you Gu Beheading. Whatever. As long as you're happy. When he did not dare to answer, his calm tone almost made Liuyan Ling die of anger. All right, I shouldn't have saved you. I let you reveal your identity in the interrogation room, and then you'll be on the front page of all the newspapers in Yanjing City tomorrow. You should be satisfied now. Thank you, Ling. Gohan suddenly stopped and grabbed both of Liuyan Ling's hands. He looked into Liuyan Ling's big watery eyes and said, This thank you is sincere. Well, it's good that you thank me. Liuyan Ling took her hands out of Gohan's hands and touched Gohan's cheeks. If you really want to thank me, then be my man. I won't treat you badly. Ahem. Song Yifei could not stand it anymore. What do you mean by be your man? What should I do? Ling, Gohan just arrived here and spent the whole afternoon in the Discipline Inspection Commission. Don't bother him anymore. Let's go home and have dinner. Song Yifei was eager to ask Gohan to go home with her. After all, she still had a table full of dishes on the table. Song Yifei remembered that he had once told his mother about his troubles, but his mother first scolded him for being shameless and then told him this. Yifei. There is a saying passed down from my ancestors, if you want a man's heart, you must have a man's stomach. Back then, your father was conquered by the delicacies your mother made. If you really like that boy, then you should learn how to cook. When you're half as good as your mother, that man will never be able to leave you. Although Song Yifei would rather eat instant noodles every day than eat his mother's dishes, this suggestion was very constructive. Therefore, during the days when Song Yifei stayed in Yanjing City, he spent the rest of his time learning how to cook, except for fighting with Yuan Ko. That was why there was a table full of dishes in Song Yifei's home. At this time, Song Yifei naturally hoped that Gohan would come home as soon as possible so that he could have a taste of his cooking and see if he would never leave him. Yes. You don't know this, Guhan, but our Ifei has been preparing for this since the day before yesterday. She's already bought a few dozen pounds of pork, and her hands have been cut by the kitchen knife. If you don't try Ifei's cooking, you'll be letting her down. Liu Ling also helped him at the right time, which made Song Ifei feel very grateful, and his impression of Liu Ling improved a lot. Besides, I want to have a good talk with you tonight. What happened after we left that day? I'm completely baffled by the report you sent over from Yuzhong City. Others may not know, but I know it best. In the end, it was a primordial level Yuan Ko, which was definitely not something that Lu Lei could deal with alone. Liu Ling pinched Guhan's waist hard. Tell me the truth, don't lie to me. How could Guhan answer this question? Should he say that he had become Gu Xianyuan and used the power of the Xianyuan sword to destroy Ancestor Mingi? Even if Guhan told the truth, Liu Ling probably would not believe it. Guhan laughed and suddenly asked Liu Ling, Ling, I have a question for you, but it's a bit abrupt. If you don't want to answer me, I won't force you. There's no need to be abrupt between us. Ask whatever you want. I will definitely answer you, Liu Ling said with a smile. Well, I want to ask you, do you still have severed black hair in your family? Guhan finally asked the most important question in his heart. Song Yifei and Lu Shihua, on the other hand, were confused. Lu Shihua was curious. After all, she had just entered the world of sword-bearers, so she did not know much about the common knowledge among sword-bearers. She did not know what severed black hair was. On the other hand, Song Yifei was confused. She did not know why Guhan mentioned severed black hair. Could it be that Guhan wanted to get a sword lady? Yes. Liu Ling gave an affirmative answer. She immediately asked, Why are you asking this? Do you not want to be poor, or do you not want to be the heavenly reliance? Oh right, you seem to have become a famous sword-bearer. You have never told me who your sword lady is. I want to replace my famed sword sword mistress, Guhan answered honestly. On the armored hover train, Guhan thought about severed black hair for a long time and decided to get it from the Liu family. Currently, Guhan knew that there were two ways to get severed black hair. The first was through the Liu family, and the second was through the challenge in Moscow. Moscow was thousands of kilometers away from Yanjing City. There was no armored hover train between the two cities. If he wanted to get to Moscow, he could only rely on a hover car to get there. The round trip would take at least 2 months. In addition, the 8 academies meeting in Yanjing City would take half a month. The time needed was too long. More importantly, Guhan did not know anything about the Moscow base. He did not know what kind of test he had to pass to get severed black hair. So, after thinking about it deeply, Moscow was the only option. Guhan's first goal was to get severed black hair from the Liu family. After all, the Liu family was on the edge of Yanjing City. It would only take him half a day to get there. Moreover, there was another great advantage in choosing the Liu family: Guhan and Liu Ling's relationship. Although it would seem like he was relying on a woman, Guhan planned to use his relationship with Liu Ling to gain the favor of the Liu family and obtain the precious severed black hair. Since he had decided to get severed black hair from the Liu family, Liu Ling was a link that he could not bypass. Liu Ling would definitely ask him why he wanted severed black hair. Of course, Guhan could easily make up a lie to answer her, but the lie would be exposed sooner or later. If Guhan wanted to maintain a good relationship with Liu Ling, he could not lie to Liu Ling about this. At the very least, he had to give her an answer that was 80% true and 20% false. Therefore, Guhan told Liu Ling the reason why he needed severed black hair with 80% true and 20% false. During the invasion, I had no choice but to find a famed sword maiden to coordinate with me in order to help Master fight. However, in the game, I had already promised my famed sword maiden that I would coordinate with her in real life and free her from the shackles of the game. I had to fulfill my promise, so I needed to sever the black hair. You're really impressive. You managed to coordinate with a famed sword maiden successfully. If the other sword bearers who were stuck at treasured sword level heard what you said, they would probably want to strangle you to death with both hands. Liu Ling was speaking the truth. There were many treasured sword level sword bearers who had tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of sword essences in their bodies. They had tried to coordinate with hundreds or even hundreds of famed sword maidens, but they could not find a famed sword maiden that could coordinate with them. Yet, Gohan had succeeded with just a random one. If those treasured sword-level sword-bearers heard this, they would definitely die from anger. There's another serious problem. Liu Ling's expression suddenly turned serious. Are you really worthy of your current famed sword maiden by doing this? Using the black hair to sever the sword mark between you and her is a great humiliation to the sword maiden. If you don't do it properly, you might end up like… Liu Ling suddenly stopped at this point. A strange expression unknowingly appeared on her face, as if her words had touched upon something extremely embarrassing. In any case, you have to carefully consider this matter. If it seriously hurts the sword maiden's pride, you absolutely cannot do it unless it's absolutely necessary. For a sword bearer to use the black hair to sever the sword mark between themselves and a sword maiden, this was undoubtedly an extreme humiliation to the sword maiden. It would also destroy her pride. This was just like how a woman in ancient times would be divorced by her husband. Once this happened, the woman would most likely not be able to live on. This was because their pride had been fatally insulted. They had already been abandoned and despised by their husbands. It was the same for a sword maiden. If things went wrong, the sword maiden might enter a state of eternal hibernation, and from then on, she would no longer be willing to synchronize with humans. If worse came to worst, she would end up like a certain sword maiden in the past, and the consequences would still be severe until now. Therefore, when Liu Ling heard about this matter, her first reaction was to dissuade Gohan from doing this. There's no need to think about it. I, Gohan, have already promised her, and I will definitely fulfill my promise. Liu Ling could hear how resolute Gohan's answer was, and she could not help but be curious. Who is the famed sword maiden in your game? If it's possible, let me meet her in the game and explain to her. I'll ask her to give up on this promise. After all, it's just a game. I can't let the game affect the sword maiden in reality and cause serious consequences in reality. If it really doesn't work, I'll send her consciousness fragment into hibernation and let her wait for her real master to come in her sleep. That's the best outcome. Liu Ling's intention was to let King Yu's consciousness fragment enter a state of hibernation. Liu Ling even planned to secretly erase this fragment of King Yu's consciousness. Although this was a very cruel thing to the King of Yu, it was the most correct choice for humans. This way, Gohan would be freed from this promise, and he would not use the black hair to destroy a sword maiden's pride. Chapter 699. Ling, this matter is very complicated, and I can't tell you the details. You just need to know that I need to get the black hair to get a swordmistress. Otherwise, I'll live in guilt for the rest of my life. I can't let her down. Gohan's reply to Liu Ling's persuasion was very simple, so simple that Liu Ling couldn't find any words to persuade him. Alright then. Although we're friends, I have to tell you that the black hair is too precious. It's not up to me to decide whether to give it to you. It has to be decided by my grandfather. The most I can do is introduce you. You'll have to rely on yourself for the rest. Liu Ling gave up on persuading Gohan. However, her next words made it clear that she wouldn't help Gohan too much on this matter. She was only going to introduce him. However, this was already a very important role. It was practically impossible for ordinary people to meet the previous family head of the Lunyan family, who was the person in charge of the Lunyan family. Only when one became a spirit sword wielder could they request to visit the Lunyan family. As for whether the Lun Yen family would be willing to meet them, that was not certain. We'll talk about the black hair later. Let's go eat first. Liun Ling said. No, I have to go now. This matter can't be delayed. Guhan suddenly said. Why is that? It's almost 5 in the afternoon. Even if you leave now, it'll be dark by the time you reach the Lun Yen family. My grandfather won't see you then. Liun Ling was confused. If I leave now, I'll be able to see your grandfather tomorrow morning. But if I leave tomorrow, I'm afraid I'll only be able to see your grandfather tomorrow afternoon. There's a difference of half a day. It's enough for me to make a trip back to Yanjing City. Guhan said hurriedly. Is half a day that important to you? Liun Ling was even more confused when she heard Guhan's words. Then why did you stay in the 4th ring for so long this morning? If you left at that time, you might have already seen my grandfather. I don't know why either. When I was in the interrogation room just now, I had an ominous feeling in my heart. I must get my hands on the black hair severing as soon as possible. Guhan's voice actually trembled a little. Just like what Guhan had said, when he was in the interrogation room just now, his heart inexplicably fluctuated, as if something very important was being taken away by someone else. Guhan instinctively thought of the king of Yu, Go Jian, who was currently in the Sword Pavilion in Yanjing City. He did not want to delay any longer. Ridiculous! Liun Ling glared at Guhan with dissatisfaction. She instinctively wanted to reject Guhan. But on second thought, if they set off tonight, wouldn't Guhan be able to stay at his house for the night? Fleeting Time's body heated up at the thought of this, and his words of rejection became something else. All right then, I'll give it to you. I'll just work a little harder, as if I owed you in my previous life. Song Yifei had been listening to the conversation between Guhan and Liun Ling silently. She wanted to interrupt, but she had no idea how. She only knew a little about the black hair severing. Moreover, the black hair severing was from Liun Ling's family. Song Yifei's family did not have such a treasure. No matter how much she said, it would be useless. How could she help Guhan at all? If only I had the green hair severing sword. Song Yifei thought silently, but it was just a thought. She knew that she could not possibly have such a precious thing. However, Song Yifei did not expect that the two of them would actually decide to rush to the Lun Yen clan overnight while they were talking. Guhan, why don't you guys eat before you leave? I've prepared a big table at home. Song Yifei said weakly. Oh Yifei, you can eat by yourself. Don't wait for me. I'll try your cooking if I have the chance in the future. Guhan did not understand Song Yifei's thoughts. However, even if Guhan did understand, his answer would not change. All right. I wish you all the best. What else could Song Yifei do? She could only say reluctantly. Shihua, you can go with Yifei for now. Stay at her place for now. I'll come to see you when I get back. Guhan entrusted Shihua to Song Yifei, then jogged with Liun Ling towards the nearest train station. Bastard! Song Yifei silently shed 2 thin tears as she watched Guhan and Liun Ling leave. Why can't I coordinate with the king of Yu, Go Jian? In a sword pavilion that occupied a much larger area than the sword pavilion in Yuzhang City, Zhu Ren quarreled with a waiter. There was a glass cover beside him, which protected the real king of Yu, Go Jian. Lord Swordsman, I've already explained that the king of Yu's Gojian sword is not within the scope of the sword Maiden that you can synchronize with. If you want to synchronize with the king of Yu's Gojian sword, you must obtain the approval of our pavilion master. The waiter explained patiently, but there was a hint of mockery on his face, as if he was mocking Ku Rakin for overestimating himself. How could this be? I clearly saw that person touch the king of Yu's Gojian sword. Did he also get the Lord Pavilion Master's approval? Ku Rakin's face was full of anger. That lord is different from you. He is the sword-bearer of our Swallow capital city. Naturally, he can touch the king of Yu's Gojian sword without permission. But you're different. You're a sword-bearer from Yuzhong City, so you need to get permission from our pavilion master before you can touch some of the sword maidens. Nonsense. How come I've never heard of this rule before? Ku Rock-in was even more furious. Our Yuzhong City has never had such a rule. When have your people ever come to synchronize with the sword maidens of our sword pavilion? We've never stopped you and allowed you to synchronize with them. Why is it that when it comes to us we have to get permission? Lord Swordsman, please don't be angry. This is a new rule that was set half a month ago. It's normal that you don't know about it, the waiter said with a smile. Perhaps you don't know about it, but our sword pavilion master took over half a month ago. The current sword pavilion master is Sword Immortal Tianhen. Our Sword Immortal Tianhen said that Yuzhong City is on the decline. It would be a waste to hand over such a good sword maiden to Yuzhong City. It's better to leave it with the sword bearers of our Swallow capital city. That way it'll be worth it. Ku Rock-in had heard about Sword Immortal Tianhen from the sword bearers of Swallow capital city when they were eating. Sword Immortal Tianhen was the disciple of Sword Immortal Six Paths, the original sword pavilion master of Swallow capital city. 18 days ago, he synchronized with the sword maiden of Immortal Sword Tier and became an Immortal Sword Tier sword bearer. He was also the first Immortal Sword Tier sword bearer this year. As a result, Swallow capital city had a total of 7 Immortal Sword Tier sword bearers, and the total number of Immortal Sword Tier sword bearers returned to 18, filling the gap left by Sword Immortal by Stallion's death. The total number of sword tier sword bearers in Swallow capital city was more than 1/3 of the total number of the 8 base cities. Compared to the pitiful 1 person in Yuzhong City, Swallow capital city's strength had reached a terrifying level. The waiter continued, although Sword Immortal Tianhen's words are a little harsh, they are all true. Your Yuzhong City is really getting worse. Not only is there only 1 Immortal Sword Tier sword bearer left, but I heard that you've recently made an ordinary person the Sword Pavilion Master. This is really too much. It's a complete disgrace to the 8 base cities as well as the Sword Pavilion. When Sword Immortal Tianhen heard this news, he immediately issued this order. Sword Immortal Tianhen said that since you don't care about the Sword Pavilion, why don't you hand over all the sword maidens in the Sword Pavilion and let Swallow capital city keep them together? As long as you're willing to hand over all the sword maidens in the Sword Pavilion, Sword Immortal Tianhen can revoke this rule and everyone can go on as usual. Otherwise, the people of Yuzhong City are not allowed to touch the sword maidens ranked 800 or above in the Ancient Sword Record, 400 or above in the Treasured Sword Record, and 100 or above in the Famed Sword Record. Ku Rock-in was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. It turned out that all of this was on Gohan. If he hadn't stubbornly appointed Lu Shihua as the Sword Pavilion Master, Swallow capital city's Sword Pavilion wouldn't have prevented him from synchronizing with the King of Yu, Go Jian. You're giving me ridiculous orders. This order is against the Sword Bearers Convention. I'm going to complain to the Sword Council. Ku Rock-in's eyes were about to spit fire. The Sword Bearers Convention states that no city's sword pavilion can restrict the sword bearers of other cities based on the affiliation of the sword bearers. This order of yours is a serious violation of the Sword Bearers Convention. You'll regret it. You've memorized the Sword Bearers Convention quite well. The waiter muttered softly. Don't be so anxious. Sword Immortal Tianhen didn't say that you couldn't synchronize with him at all. He just didn't want those sword bearers with no strength and only dumb luck to obtain those powerful sword ladies. It's not impossible for you to synchronize with the King of Yu, Go Jian. As long as you can defeat anyone on this list, we'll allow you to synchronize with the King of Yu, Go Jian. The waiter handed a booklet to Ku Rock-in. Ku Rock-in hurriedly flipped open the booklet and saw that there were 20 names on it. What's the meaning of this? Ku Rock-in asked. These are the top 20 sword bearers of Swallow capital city. As long as you can defeat any one of them, we'll acknowledge your strength, the waiter explained. Why didn't you give me this booklet in the first place? Did you decide not to tell me? Ku-Rak-In asked angrily. I'd have given it to you for free. The waiter chuckled. These are all peerless experts. It's fine if you just look at their names. You can only dream about defeating them. I was afraid that you'd feel even more despair if you saw them, so I didn't give them to you. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.